Chapter 1453. Shirue. O's smile was cold, and her tone was sarcastic. I'm afraid that someone is desperately trying to push all the blame onto someone else. Although she did not mention a name, everyone could tell that she was talking about Jiang Jiwan. Liang Xiaoxiao was also stunned. She had only received this news by chance a few days ago, but she did not know who sent it. She had wanted to investigate, but the other party was very secretive. She could not find anything even after a few days of searching, so she had to put it aside for the time being. However, she believed this news very much, because it was too detailed. She knew that it was most likely someone who had secretly leaked this news. However, she did not expect that it would be Jiang Jiwan. After all, not long ago, she and her father had chased after Jiang Jiwan, causing her to panic like a stray dog. In the end, she had no choice but to hide in the Yuntian Tower and did not dare to come out again. Jiang Jiwan must hate them to the core. Why would she take the initiative to say this? However, after hearing Shirue O's words, Liang Xiaoxiao realized that she was wrong. Jiang Jiwan not only hated them, but also hated Chu Yu and the school. If he could use this opportunity to viciously attack his enemies, then why not? In the end, Jiang Jiwan, only needed to reap the benefits. After coming back to her senses, Liang Xiaoxiao's face turned green and white. She could not help but curse angrily. That be *TCH. Most of the people present had no relationship with Jiang Jiwan, so they did not care when they heard this. As for Rong Xiao, his attitude towards Jiang Jiwan had always been as cold as the wind, so he naturally did not take it to heart. The only person who was upset when he heard this was Bailey June. However, Liang Xiaoxiao was about to explode in anger. How could she care about Bailey June? Besides, the one who was at fault was Jiang Jiwan. Even if Bailey June was unhappy, he was in no position to make a scene in front of her. Unbeknownst to her, Jiang Jiwan, who was being insulted by her, was at the scene and had heard everything clearly. Jiang Jiwan's heart was beating violently. Her blood was about to rush out, and her temples were throbbing. If it wasn't for her last bit of rationality, she would have already rushed over and ripped Liang Xiaoxiao's mouth apart. She clenched her fists so hard that her knuckles turned white. With great difficulty, he suppressed the emotions in his heart. Wait, these people were all waiting. So at that time, my third brother's death, Liang Xiaoxiao gritted her teeth. So it's still related to her. Was it that bitch who told the elders not to save them? Oh, right. At that time, didn't Jiang Jiwan admit it herself? At that time, third brother had begged her, but she ignored him. At that time, Jiang Jiwan said that she couldn't persuade the academy elders, so she had no choice but to do so. But now, it was clear that she was the mastermind behind this matter. Chu Liwei opened her mouth, but before she could say anything, Shirue took over. Actually, you can't completely blame Jiang Jiwan for this matter. After all, we couldn't even protect ourselves at that time. How could we have the extra strength to help? Jiang Jiwan clenched her fists so hard that they almost broke. Shirue seemed to be speaking up for her, but in fact, she was giving her a hard push. She was determined to kill her. However, no matter how much she wanted to argue, she couldn't open her mouth as she was wearing another face. A sweet and fishy smell surged up. Jiang Jiwan swallowed it. After hearing Shirue O's words, many people expressed that they were convinced. Although the Meteor sect had a good relationship with Lingxiao College, it wasn't to the extent that they would put in so much effort for one of their students. Shirue was young, but she was very experienced in dealing with people and was very bold. Since she had said so, then it should be true. Chu Liwei glanced at Shirue, and the corners of her lips curled up. It felt good to have someone's help. She didn't persuade Zichun to release the legendary three-eyed eagle in vain. That canyon is very dangerous. It's hard to say whether anyone will live or die if they go in. We also suffered a lot when we went in. Shirue tucked her hair behind her ear and said with a smile, I heard that many people here suspect that Chu Yu has a very good understanding of the northern territory of the Great Desolate Land. That's why he was able to obtain such a precious opportunity when others were having a hard time surviving. But I wonder if you have any evidence to prove it? The few people from the Meteor sect, including me, have been with them all this time. If Chuyu is really up to something, how can we not know about it? Aren't you looking down on the Meteor sect too much? At the end of her speech, Shui O's tone carried a trace of displeasure and arrogance. Liang Xiaoxiao's arrogance was suppressed, and her expression became somewhat hesitant. Is this true or false? Liang Ye took the opportunity to pull her back. Sit down. How can you say such things without solid evidence? Liang Xiaoxiao could only clench her teeth and sit back down. After going around in circles, the problem still came back to Jiang Ji1. If she had the chance to meet her, she would definitely teach her a lesson. I'm afraid that we can't come to a conclusion on this matter in such a short time. I think we should change the question. A man who seemed to be in his 30s suddenly spoke. He was wearing a dark purple robe. His cheeks were thin, and his facial features were ordinary. Only his eyes seemed to have thorns, and they were exceptionally sharp and deep. Chu Luo glanced at him, but didn't recognize him. Rongxiu's voice was heard at this moment. Ziguang County's princess, Yao Bin. They have suffered heavy casualties in the northern territory of the Great Desolate Land. He was very close to Chu Luiyue, so his low and deep voice was exceptionally moving. Chu Luiyue's ears became slightly hot. In addition, they have a blood feud with the Black Demon Cave. Chu Luiyue immediately became alert and tapped her fingers on the armrest. Sure enough, in the next moment, the other party went straight to the point and asked directly. Chu Yu, it's rumored that you have a close relationship with the Black Demon Cave. How do you explain this? Chu Luiyue sat up straight. Unlike her previous carefree calmness, her expression was much more serious and solemn. I have nothing to do with the Black Demon Cave. She enunciated each word clearly. Yao Bin frowned, and his expression was dangerous. If you have nothing to do with it, why do you have the aura of the Black Demon Cave on you? Digression. It's over a 5-star rating in the bookstore. February is really too pitiful. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1454. Everyone looked over, their eyes full of scrutiny and doubt. Compared to Liang Xiaokong's death, they were more concerned about this. The Black Demon Cave had a bad reputation in the Divine Ruins world. Although they had kept a low profile in recent years, it did not change most people's impression of them. Therefore, when they heard that Chu Luiyue was related to the Black Demon Cave, a string in their minds immediately tightened. Elder Bo Yin and the others also looked over. They still did not know what was going on. If Chu Luiyue could not clarify this issue, she would be attacked by the crowd. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes. She had the aura of the Black Demon Cave on her. She had only exchanged blows with them in the past few times, but had not done anything else. Could it be the so-called aura was left behind because of this? It shouldn't be. She had never heard of anyone being able to leave their opponent's aura on their body while fighting. She said indifferently, Princess Yao, please forgive Chuyu for not knowing what you mean. I did have a dispute with the people of the Black Demon Cave before, but that was all. As for the rest, I don't know what's going on. Elder Wan Zheng's expression changed slightly, and he could not help but ask in a low voice. Chuyu, you fought with the Black Demon Cave before? Those are extremely vicious people. If Chuyu ran into them, wouldn't he? Fortunately, he was fine. It was not just Elder Wanzheng. Hearing Chu Liyue's words, many of the people around felt their hearts beating like a drum. The people of the Black Demon Cave have not come out in recent years. How did you run into them? Yao Bin leaned forward, his eyes fixed on Chu Luiyue. The pressure was extremely strong. Do you have any witnesses or evidence to back up your claims? Witnesses? Evidence? Chu Luiyue could not help but chuckle. Princess Yao, why would I lie about something like this? Did he want her to resurrect Shang Wanwan? Besides, even if they didn't appear in public, it doesn't mean that they really don't go out, right? As far as I know, the strength of the Black Demon Cave can be considered tyrannical, and the scale of the entire sect is not small. Will they really obediently stay in their own territory and do nothing for the next few years? That was impossible. Yao Bin choked. All right, there's one more thing that I need to make clear to everyone. The person who fought with me is no longer a member of the Black Demon Cave. As for who he is, I have no idea. Not a member of the Black Demon Cave? How are they supposed to investigate? Yaobin suddenly said, Chuyu, my Purple Light County has fought with the Black Demon Cave for many years and can be considered to have some experience. I can confirm that you do have the aura of the Black Demon Cave. If you really have a clear conscience, do you dare to let me investigate? Chu Yuyue's eyebrows twitched slightly. Before he could speak, he heard Rong Xiu's soft voice. How does Princess Yao plan to investigate? Yaobin glanced at Rong Xiu, knowing that he intended to stand up for him. However, if he didn't get to the bottom of this matter, he definitely wouldn't let it go. Their Purple Light County would not easily let go of anyone who was related to the Black Demon Cave. Yaobin took something from his hand. It was a thumb ring, completely carved out of purple jade. It was sparkling and translucent, glossy and shiny. As the light flowed, one could vaguely see something flowing slowly inside. A wave of pressure that could not be ignored spread out from it. This thumb ring can detect the aura of the Black Demon Cave. If there is anything related to the Black Demon Cave in Chuyu's body, it will be forced out. If there is nothing, everything will be normal. As Yaobin spoke, he looked at Chu Luiyue. Chuyu, do you dare to accept? Although it was somewhat shameful to accept such an investigation in public, there was no doubt that this was the most straightforward way to clear his name. No matter how much he said, it was better to verify his innocence. Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment, then nodded. Good. Anyway, she had a clear conscience. What was there to be afraid of? Rongxiu looked at her. Seeing her determined expression, his thin lips moved slightly, but he did not say anything in the end. Yaobin stood up, walked to the center, and said to Chu Luiyue, Please come forward. Chu Luiyue walked over. The two of them stood still, separated by 10 steps. Yaobin's expression was much more serious. He raised his hand, then closed his eyes. The thumb ring flew out from his hand, then headed straight for Chu Luiyue. Soon, it stopped above Chu Luiyue's head. Buzz! A roar sounded. Purple light instantly poured down like a waterfall, surrounding Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue's body was completely surrounded by that purple light curtain. In an instant, it was as if countless sharp and cold blades were scraping her body. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. But fortunately, the pain was not too intense, so she endured it. Everyone held their breaths and waited. Yaobin didn't even blink as he stared at the screen. The passage of time seemed to be extraordinarily long. Suddenly, an unusual fluctuation came from Chu Luiyue's universe ring. Whoosh! The purple jade thumb ring spun quickly, and the surrounding light curtain formed a whirlpool around Chu Luiyue like water, emitting a sharp cry. Yaobin's expression turned serious. There was indeed something fishy. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. Some could no longer hold back and leaned forward, afraid that they would miss something. They would not know if they did not investigate, but once they did, there was really something wrong with Chuyu. Elder Bo Yin and the others looked at each other and saw the shock and astonishment in each other's eyes. Didn't Chuyu say that he had nothing to do with the Black Demon Cave? Now, Chu Luiyue looked down. A white light suddenly flashed in her mind. Right? How could she forget about the wooden tablet? Some time ago, she had come to Fangzhou City with Luo Yinming and Zhuo Sheng to relax. At that time, she had met a middle-aged man at a street stall in the city. That man was the soul that had been chasing her relentlessly. It was also that time that she had obtained a wooden tablet from him. That was the wooden tablet of the Black Demon Cave. The totem of the Black Demon Cave was clearly engraved on it. After repelling the soul, she had wanted to destroy the wooden tablet, but after thinking about it again and again, she put it aside for the time being. She did not expect that it would cause her such trouble today. Whoosh! The whistling sound was even sharper. It was as if an invisible force was desperately drilling into the Qian Kuan ring in an attempt to force the wooden tablet out. However, even after a long while, the interspatial ring showed no signs of being broken. Yaobin frowned. How could the defensive power of this universe ring be so strong? Chu Luiyue also suddenly thought of this question, and her heart skipped a beat. This was Rong Xiu's universe ring. It was also a symbol of the saint's identity. It was normal for it to be able to resist Yao Bin's power, but in the eyes of others, mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1455. Anyone with a brain would have guessed that there was something wrong with the interspatial ring. Chu Liuyue's mind raced. Ever since she left the Yuntian Tower, she had disguised the interspatial ring whenever she went out. From the outside, it looked just like an ordinary gray interspatial ring. As long as one did not check it carefully, no one would think that the most noble ring of the Yuntian Tower was on her finger. But now, the interspatial ring easily intercepted Yao Bin's power. At this time, Yao Bin also noticed that something was wrong. He looked at Chu Liyue with eyes full of suspicion. The interspatial ring on Chu Yu's finger seemed to be unusual. He was slightly angry. He suddenly raised his hand and threw out a divine power. The divine power quickly poured into the purple jade ring. In an instant, its momentum soared. The wind whistled. Chu Liyue stood in the center of the vortex, her clothes fluttering. She almost felt that her body was about to be strangled by the violent power. She made a prompt decision. "Ha!" A slight sound came out. She calmly removed the power from the interspatial ring and released the wooden tablet at the same time. Whoosh! Everyone only saw something suddenly fly out. Chu Liyue staggered and quietly escaped from the vortex. At the same time, she resealed the interspatial ring. There were too many things hidden in it that could not be shown publicly. Yao Bin's figure flashed forward swiftly, and he held the wooden token tightly in his hand. Then, he waved his wrist and took back the purple jade ring. The oppressive power disappeared, and Chu Liyue finally breathed a sigh of relief. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. In the eyes of the onlookers, that thing could not withstand the pressure of the purple jade ring and was forced out. Didn't they see that Chu Yu's face was a little pale? However, no one had any other doubts, except for Yao Bin. He glanced at Chu Liyue suspiciously. In that instant, his intuition shouldn't be wrong. The ring on Chu Yu's finger was not ordinary, but it indeed only happened in an instant. Looking at Chu Yu now, it didn't seem like it. Could it be that he was wrong? A trace of uncertainty appeared in Yao Bin's heart. "Princess Yao, what are you holding in your hand?" A question interrupted Yao Bin's thoughts. He calmed down and planned to suppress these things first and talk about it later. The most important thing now was the Black Demon Cave. He glanced at the item in his hand. His expression suddenly became cold. Although he had guessed what it was before, when he saw the totem on the wooden tablet that he hated so deeply, his heart was still filled with endless resentment and anger. He clutched the wooden sign tightly and suddenly looked at Chu Liyue. "Chu Yu, this is the wooden tablet of the Black Demon Cave, and its level is quite high. If you really have nothing to do with the Black Demon Cave, why would you have such a thing on you?" As soon as he said that, the crowd, Black Demon Cave's wooden tablet. That was not something an ordinary person. Wouldn't this confirm his previous suspicions towards Chu Yu? It's this wooden tablet of the Black Demon Cave. It seems that only their own people have it, right? That's right. A few years ago, we fought with the Black Demon Cave and saw their people take out this wooden tablet with our own eyes. This wooden tablet is carved from sea buckthorn wood, and the totem of the Black Demon Cave is engraved in the middle. I heard that every totem was drawn with their own blood as a guide, and no one else can copy it. Moreover, they value this wooden tablet very much. Generally speaking, they would never let it fall into the hands of others. The crowd discussed fervently, clearly suspecting Chu Liyue. It was as if they were certain that Chu Liyue was in cahoots with the Black Demon Cave. Elder Bo Yin and the others were also stunned for a moment. Black Demon Cave's wooden tablet? How could that kid have such a thing on him? Elder Bo Yin was stunned for a moment, and then looked at Rong Xiu. The two of them had a close relationship. Did Rong Xiu know about this? Unfortunately, Rong Xiu's face was as calm and indifferent as ever, and no clues could be seen. As if sensing Elder Bo Yan's gaze, Rong Xiu glanced sideways, and the corners of his lips curled up imperceptibly, giving Elder Bo Yin a reassuring look. Elder Bo Yin heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that Rong Xiao knew what was going on. He was relieved. At first, he did not believe that Chu Yu had anything to do with the Black Demon Cave. Who did not know that Rong Xiao and the Black Demon Cave were enemies? If Chu Yu really had something to do with the Black Demon Cave, why would Rong Xiao protect him like this? Speaking of which, Rong Xiao was part of the reason why the Black Demon Cave had suddenly stopped in the past few years. However, not many people knew about this, so when the wooden tablet appeared, everyone was full of doubts about Chu Yu. Chu Liyue coughed a few times. Without the pressure of the external force, her complexion looked better. However, her lips were still slightly pale, and it was not difficult to tell what kind of pain she had just experienced. Chu Liyue looked at the wooden tablet and smiled helplessly. "So this is what you're talking about," she rubbed her eyebrows. "Have you forgotten? I said just now that I've fought with their people. This wooden tablet was obtained at that time." Yaobin did not believe it. "So simple. I don't think so. Everyone in the Black Demon sect has a wooden tablet like this. In other words, this is a symbol of their status. The stronger they are, the higher their level, the more importance they attach to the wooden tablet. The one in my hand must be a famous existence in the Black Demon sect. To be more direct, it must be a high god expert at the very least. Such a person, as long as they still have a breath left, would never let this wooden tablet fall into the hands of others, especially their enemies. You said that you obtained this thing at that time. Doesn't this mean that you killed a high god expert of the other party?" Yaobin twitched the corner of his mouth, and the lines on his thin face were cold and hard. Who would believe this? There was dead silence. It was not difficult to deduce that Chu Yu should have this wooden tablet before he entered the northern region of the Eldritch Desolation. After he returned, he had been staying in Lingxiao College and had no chance to obtain this thing. When he entered the northern region of the Eldritch Desolation, he seemed to be a rank 8 warrior. With such strength, killing a high god expert. It was not a fool's dream? However, in the face of Yao Bin's questioning, Chu Yue's face did not show the slightest bit of panic. She laughed, and her tone was still calm. "Princess Yao seems to have forgotten one thing. I just said that the person who fought with me has already left the Black Demon sect. So this thing should not be that important to him, right?" Yao Bin was stunned, and the rest of his words were stuck in his throat. Yes, Chu did say that. But at that time, he did not care. If that person was really no longer a member of the Black Demon sect, this wooden tablet would naturally become a piece of trash, not worth mentioning. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1456. Yaobin stared at Chu Liyue, as if he wanted to see through all her thoughts. At present, there were two possibilities. Firstly, Chu Yu had long known the importance of this wooden tablet to the people of the Black Demon sect, so he deliberately said those words to excuse himself. Secondly, Chu did not know anything about this. He just happened to meet someone who had left the Black Demon sect and obtained this wooden tablet by chance. But for a moment, he was unable to determine what was going on. "Based on your words alone, we can't believe your words. Do you have any evidence? Or is there someone else who was fighting alongside you?" Chu Liyue said honestly. "At that time, there was only him and me. No one else was present." Many people looked at each other. Alone? That was even more absurd. If someone helped, it wasn't impossible for Chu Yu to win this battle. But now, even he admitted that he was the only one. It was really hard to believe. Yao Bin's expression turned even colder as he gripped the wooden tablet tightly. "If that's the case, I'm afraid we have to investigate thoroughly." "Wait." Chu Liyue opened her mouth and interrupted him. The corners of her lips curled up slightly as she smiled softly. "Although I was fighting alone at that time, I have a witness for this matter." Witness? Including Yao Bin. Everyone present was stunned. It was clearly a one-on-one battle. How could there be a witness? Just as everyone was filled with doubts, Chu Liyue turned around and waved at Luo Yinming and Zhuosheng, who were standing behind Elder Wensi. "Yinming, Zhuosheng, please help me testify." The two people who were suddenly called out were at a loss. Zhuo Sheng pointed directly at himself and asked in disbelief, "What? Us?" Why didn't he know that this matter had anything to do with them? Luo Yinming stared at the wooden tablet and suddenly thought of something. He made up his mind and walked forward. "Hey, wait for me." Seeing him walk forward, Zhuo Sheng hurriedly chased after him. No matter what, Chu Yu needed their help, so they had to help. They quickly stood beside Chu Luiwei. Countless gazes fell on the two of them, causing them to involuntarily become nervous. Although the two of them were disciples of aristocratic families and could be considered to be experienced and knowledgeable. However, they had never experienced such a big scene where all the big shots of the divine ruins were staring at them. Those gazes seemed to materialize as they landed on their bodies, causing their bodies to stiffen. Even the carefree and lively and carefree Zhuo Sheng had become much more obedient. Luo Yinming's heart was beating a little fast, and her hands and her sleeves were clenched tightly. He instinctively glanced at Chu Luiwei, but he saw that the young man beside her had a calm expression, a smile on his lips, and was at ease, as if he wasn't affected by the invisible pressure at all. This brat's attitude was too good, Luo Yinming in his heart. In such a situation, he was to be in such a situation. But I heard that he was the one who suggested this meeting. Someone who could do such a thing naturally had a lot of guts. We can testify for Chu Yu. Luo Yiming took a deep breath and said word by word. He raised his hand and pointed at the wooden token in Yao Bin's hand. We just happened to be with him on the day he obtained the wooden tablet. We also know exactly how he obtained it. In short, what he said just now is true. Zhuo Sheng finally reacted and hurriedly nodded. That's right. We can indeed testify. This wooden token was bought by him from a peddler when we were strolling around Fangzhou City. He even cut the price by half. The corner of Yao Bin's eyes twitched. Chu Luiwei was both grateful and amused. Under such circumstances, anyone who stood up for her was taking a huge risk. But they still did it. Seeing that everyone seemed to be at a loss, Luo Yinming immediately recounted what happened that day. Of course, he and Zhuo Sheng did not participate in the part where Chu Luiwei chased out of the city and fought, so they skipped over it. But overall, it did indeed support Chu Luiwei's previous statement. Zhuo Sheng, who was at the side, added a few words from time to time. That's what happened. Luo Yinming let out a long sigh. If you don't believe me, there were a few elders and students who went with us to look for Chu Yu that day. They can also testify. It was all true that happened, so it was naturally more convincing. Silence reigned in the field. After a while, Yao Bin frowned and looked at Chu Luiwei. So, that day, that person deliberately used this wooden token to lure you out of the city, and you fought. Chu Luiwei nodded. To be honest, I had a grudge with that person before, and I also knew that he was from the Black Demon Cave, so when I saw his wooden token, I chased after him without hesitation. However, after the fight, I found out that he had already left the Black Demon Cave. Actually, when you said that I killed him, it was not accurate, because he was only a soul and did not have a physical body. Just based on what I know, he had already possessed no less than 2 people. That day, I only forced him to retreat and did not kill him completely. It was also because of this that I kept that wooden token, thinking that I would have the chance to investigate it in the future. Yao Bin's expression changed slightly. This series of explanations was really flawless. He pondered for a long time. In that case, I still have one last question. If you can answer it, I will believe what you said today and completely dispel all my doubts about you. Chu Luiwei nodded. Please. Yao Bin stared at her with a heavy gaze. If that person was only left with a soul, his strength would definitely be reduced. But even so, he could possess someone, so he was at least at the level of a demigod. According to what you said, at that time, you should only be a rank 8 warrior, right? How did you win? Even though the situation was somewhat different from what they had expected at the beginning, there was still a huge gap between a rank 8 warrior and a demigod. It was like a natural chasm of combat power, and it was simply impossible for others to catch up. Chu Yu fought alone and won. How did he do it? In fact, this was the question that everyone present was curious about. During this period of time, Chu Yu's name had spread throughout the divine ruins. Among them, there were many guesses about his talent and strength. One thing was certain, and that was that Chu Yu was indeed a genius. Moreover, he seemed to be quite talented in Xian Master and Celestial Physician. However, a genius was a genius, but he might not be a powerhouse. That battle was truly inconceivable. Hearing this, Chu Yu's lips curled up, and she smiled. Her eyes were curved, and her eyes were like stars. Because of this smile, his face, which could only be considered delicate and pretty, became lively. She said very seriously and sincerely, "Because I have a trump card. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 1457. Everyone. What kind of answer was that? They had seen arrogant people, but they had never seen such arrogant people. Yaobin couldn't help but chuckle with some disapproval. Trump card? Then I wonder what kind of trump card could allow a rank 8 warrior to defeat a demigod. Since ancient times, such things were very rare. This Chu Yu, I really don't know what he was thinking to actually give such an answer. Even if he had a trump card, in the case of an extremely tyrannical opponent, the weak wouldn't even have a chance to make a move. What's more winning? Chu Luiwei crossed his arms and supported his chin with one hand, showing a troubled expression. Trump card, at that time, she had taken out Scarlet Heaven's sword and directly killed the other party. If she said it, everyone would definitely guess that it was a venerable artifact. At that time, it might cause some trouble again, but if she didn't say it, it was obvious that the situation in front of her was unsolvable. Chu Yue's hesitant look in the eyes of everyone was undoubtedly guilty. What trump card? I think it's just an excuse he made up. That's right, a rank 8 warrior fighting a demigod. Isn't this courting death? It's already very difficult to escape alive, and he actually said that he won. He really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I think either the origin of this wooden token is wrong, or he used other methods. Actually, no one has seen those people from the Black Demon Cave. Who knows if they really started fighting, or all kinds of discussions drilled into their ears. Zhuo Sheng was anxious and couldn't help but shout. What we said just now is all true. When Chu Yu came back that day, he was even injured. Being injured doesn't mean anything. Yaobin looked at Zhuo Sheng coldly, and the tyrannical pressure suddenly pressed down on Zhuo Sheng's chest, making him unable to speak. His face quickly flushed red. "Yaobin, Elderbow," Yin suddenly shouted in a low voice. An invisible force flew out. Bang! A slight collision sound rang out. Zhuo Sheng immediately felt the pressure on his body dissipate. He was finally able to relax and gasp for breath. However, his heart was still beating crazily and couldn't calm down for a long time. He knew that as long as the other party wanted to, he could take his life at any time, if not for Elder Bo Yan's help. "Yaobin, don't go too far." Elder Bo Yan's face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost. The coldness was threatening. Zhuo Sheng was only standing here as a witness. What right did Yaobin have to make a move? The people of his Spirit Firmament Academy were watching right here. Yaobin also felt that he had lost his composure. He frowned, and his tone softened a lot. "I just think he's a little noisy. After all, I asked Chu Yu. This old man knows that Purple Light County and Black Demon Cave are like fire and water, so it is normal for Princess Yao to lose her composure. However, everyone was here today to solve the problem, not to create a problem. Princess Yao, please pay more attention in the future. Lingxiao College and Ziguang County did not have any grudges, and Yaobin was not a bad person. Since the other party had lowered his stance, Elder Bo Yin did not intend to be too aggressive. Just a little bit of vigilance was enough. Elder Bo Yin raised his chin at Luo Yinming and Zhuo Sheng. "You two come back." The two of them looked at Chu Luiwei. Chu Luiwei knew that they were worried about her, and her heart warmed. "Don't worry, I'm fine." Only then did the two of them retreat. "Princess Yao." Chu Luiwei looked at Yao Bin. "If we continue to argue, no matter how much we say, no one will believe us completely. Why don't we change the method and end this quickly? Yao Bin frowned. What do you want to do? Chu Yueyue's lips curled up slightly as she looked around. Everyone should be thinking the same thing as Princess Yao, that I'm just lying. Since that's the case, why don't we have a match? Those who have come here today are all famous experts of the Divine Ruins world. Why don't everyone choose a demigod expert to fight with me? Let's see if I, Chu Yu, can win this match. After a short silence, the crowd was in an uproar. Did this Chu Yu know what he was saying? Fighting a demigod expert in front of everyone. Wasn't he looking for trouble for himself? Chu Luiyue had already expected their reaction, so she didn't care. She raised her chin slightly, and her smile deepened. In order to completely recreate the situation that day, I will also suppress my strength to the peak of the 8th stage. This way, after the battle, these people wouldn't have the chance to nitpick even if they wanted to. Yao Bin looked at Chu Luiyue in shock. Crazy. Really crazy. If Chu Yu fought with his current strength, perhaps he wouldn't lose so miserably. But he still wanted to suppress his strength to the 8th stage? He must be tired of living. Elder Bo Yin was a little anxious and wanted to object. However, before he could say anything, a low and pleasant voice suddenly sounded in his ear. Elder, let her do as she pleases. Elder Bo Yin turned his head in surprise. Rongxio's thin lips curled up slightly, revealing an extremely faint smile. Since she dares to say so, she must be prepared. He knew her too well. She wasn't someone who liked to be taken advantage of. After being bullied to such an extent, how could she let it go just like that? Even if the other party wanted to stop now, she wouldn't agree. Hearing this, Elder Bo Yan's heart calmed down a little. After thinking about it again and again, he could only nod. Forget it. If Chu Yu really couldn't beat the other party, it wouldn't be too late for him to make a move then. After all, he was from Lingxiao College, and no one could bully him. Since Chu Luiyue took the initiative to say so, how could the others not agree? Yao Bin took a deep breath. Good. Bold. This kind of courage wasn't something an ordinary person could have. He just didn't know if this Chu Yu was a newborn calf that wasn't afraid of tigers. Or did he really have a trump card? Chu Luiyue smiled lightly and nodded. Thank you for the compliment. Then, who do you want to invite? Everyone looked around. There were many exalted gods here, but not many demigods. A slightly hoarse voice suddenly sounded. I'll do it. Bailey June turned his head in surprise. Lil Lu. Her body hadn't completely recovered yet. Jiang Juan's heart was very firm. There weren't many opportunities to kill Chu Yu in public like this. Chu Liwa looked at the young man who stood out and narrowed her eyes dangerously. After a moment, she smiled brightly. Sure, you're welcome. Digression. Today's 4th update, tomorrow's 6th update. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1458. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Jiang Ziyuan, who had carefully disguised herself with different expressions. From the outside, she looked like an ordinary young man in all aspects, and her aura was indeed that of a demigod. Originally, everyone was still a little hesitant about the candidate, but now that someone had stepped forward, they were relieved. Moreover, this person was brought here by Bailey June, so everyone had to give him some face. In some people's eyes, perhaps Bailey Chun was trying to support the young man he had taken a fancy to. After all, if she could show off in front of so many big shots in the world of God, she would definitely become famous. No one objected, so the matter was settled. Jiang Juan took a deep breath and walked forward. When she passed by Bailey June did not forget to remind her in a low voice. Xiao Lu, be careful. Jiang Jiwan smiled and nodded. Thank you, Patriarch. As she spoke, she continued to walk forward into the center of the field, facing Chu Luiyue. Yao Bin glanced at the two of them. He did not know this person called Xiao Lu, but if she was valued so much by Bailey June, she must be quite capable. He thought for a moment and said, This match is very important. I hope that both of you can do your best and don't have any concerns. As long as it doesn't hurt your life, everything else is up to you. Many people were shocked. They all knew that this would be a fierce battle. Bailey June stared at the field, his old face expressionless. Only that pair of slightly turbid but still shrewd eyes revealed that he was not as unconcerned as he appeared to be. In fact, he had his own plans when he agreed to Jiang Jiwon's request. Jiang Jiwon had been expelled from Lingxiao College, and her reputation was almost ruined. In the world of God, she could not even raise her head. If she could win this match beautifully, everyone present would definitely look at her in a different light. At that time, it would be logical to reveal Jiang Jiwon's identity. At that time, Elder Bo Yin and the others would realize how much of a pity it was for them to give up on Jiang Jiwon. Choosing to support Chu Yu with all their might was a huge mistake. Bailey Jun's plan was perfect, and he directly ignored this match. Jiang Jiwon was facing the opponent's rank 8 warrior with the strength of a demigod. This was an extremely unfair competition to begin with. It was normal for Jiang Jiwon to win, but if he lost, he would have nothing left. Chu Liwei looked at the young man in front of him and raised his eyebrows slightly. "May I know this brother's name?" Jiang Jiwon said calmly. "I'm only here to exchange blows with you. You don't need to know my name." Her identity was fake to begin with. It was fine if she said a vague name, but the more detail she said, the easier it would be for people to find out. Rong Xiao was still here. If he wanted to investigate, she didn't think she could really avoid it. Chu Liwei shrugged and chuckled. "Don't misunderstand, I just feel that. You're a little similar to someone I know." Jiang Jiwon's heart skipped a beat, and a trace of impatience appeared on his face. "Time is of the essence. Let's end this quickly." Chu Liwei smiled and agreed. "Okay." Before she finished speaking, Jiang Jiwon had already started to move. His feet were slightly crossed, his knees were half lowered, and the force around him was rapidly gathering. His aura was surging. Chu Liwei narrowed his eyes. This aura, it was a little different for what she had expected. Every cultivator's aura was unique. Once they made a move, those who were familiar with them would definitely be able to guess it. She originally thought. Seeing Chu Liu's expression, Jiang Jiwon sneered in his heart. Since she had decided to come, of course, she had to be fully prepared. Before coming, Bailey Jun had already used the Yuan instrument to conceal and change her aura. Even if she used the force and attacked, she didn't have to worry about being detected. Moreover, with the help of the Yuan instrument, her combat strength was much stronger than before. In short, today's competition, she was definitely going to win. A jade-green origin power gushed out from her palm and quickly gathered in front of her to form a giant wheel. Then, with a flick of her other hand, a bright bead flew out. Bang! A crisp sound was heard. The bright white pearl the size of a longan collided with the center of the turquoise wheel. The sound was extremely crisp and clear, like jade hitting stone. In the next moment, the pearl was like a drop of ink falling into water, quickly spreading out. Soon, the brilliant ball of light expanded rapidly, almost occupying half of the turquoise wheel, forming a small wheel. The turquoise and bright white intertwined, and it was especially eye-catching. It was emitting a powerful aura. When everyone saw this, they were all slightly shocked. 2 types of divine power. This person called Little Lu is actually so powerful? No way. A cultivator can only have 1 type of divine power in his body. Did he take out a bead and throw it in just now? That bright, white divine power must have been stored in it in advance, right? As long as it is activated, the divine power in it can be released for one's own use. This divine pearl is very convenient to use, but the refining process is very complicated. Many people may not be able to refine a divine pearl that belongs to them, even if they break through to the immortal realm. I don't know where Little Lu got it from. Are you stupid? Bailey Jun values it so much. What is this divine pearl? Hey, now that you mention it, Bailey Jun's divine power seems to be bright white. Could this divine pearl be? Of course, this was Bailey Jun's divine pearl. This time, he had brought Jiang Jiwon here. No matter how he thought about it, he felt that it was not safe. Just in case, he gave Jiang Jiwon a lot of good things to protect herself. This divine pearl was not worth mentioning in comparison. But in the eyes of others, this was a bit too much. This is not fair. Whispers of discussion could be heard from the crowd. What level is Bailey June at? The divine pearl that he refined with his own divine power is much more powerful than an ordinary immortal realm expert. That little Lou took out this thing the moment he attacked. Isn't he bullying others? That's right. It was originally a demigod against a rank 8 warrior, and now he even used external force. Heh, is he afraid that he can't beat him? Actually, this matter is not as serious as you say. This is a competition in itself. No one said that it can't be like this, right? That's true, but I want to save face. It's not enough to fight a rank 8 warrior with the strength of a demigod, and I still want to take advantage of him. Heh. Although everyone present was here to find trouble with Chu Lui, they were still of noble status. High and mighty people cared about their reputation the most. It could be explained that they joined forces to interrogate a teenager to find out the truth. But what about the competition in front of them? Wasn't this bullying? The soft voices entered her ears, causing Jiang Juan to feel a little irritated. She steeled her heart and urged the power in her body faster. Clear sky, scorching sun wheel. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1459. The two overlapping wheels, one green and one white, suddenly began to rotate slowly in opposite directions. The middle part of the wheel made a click sound. If one listened carefully, it actually sounded like gears biting together. They were interlocked and very exquisite. As the two wheels intertwined and rotated, it also produced an astonishing pressure. The surrounding energy of heaven and earth began to quickly converge towards this side, one in front and one behind. It actually formed two energy vortexes. To be able to fuse these two divine powers so perfectly, it's rare. It seems that this young man is not completely useless. To be able to catch the eye of Bailey June, it's naturally not ordinary. But I think there seems to be a gap between these two divine powers. It can't be considered a perfect match. This person looks to be in his 20s. If he's a demigod expert, his talent isn't considered top-notch. As for Chuyu, he seems to be only 17, right? He's already a stage 9 warrior. But now that the two of them are fighting, isn't it obvious who has the advantage? This match had nothing to do with their talent. It was only related to their current combat power. Jiang Juan felt like there was a ball of fire in her heart that was constantly surging, as if it would explode from her chest in the next moment. She had heard enough of such words. So what if his talent was better? Before he grew into a true expert, he was just a piece of trash. Today, she would take revenge for both old and new grudges. Go! Jiang Ji-won roared. The huge wheel immediately crushed towards Chu Lu-wei. Its speed wasn't fast, and it was very uniform and stable. It seemed to be too leisurely. However, wherever the wheel passed, the void collapsed, and a large area of black holes appeared. One could see how powerful it was. Before it arrived in front of her, a gust of wind had already swept over. Chu Yue's clothes and hair fluttered in the wind. She narrowed her eyes slightly. The closer she got, the more she could feel the astonishing power between the two intertwining wheels. Once she was dragged into it, she was afraid that not even a complete corpse would be left. It was just a match to determine the winner. Why did he use such a killing move at the beginning? This young man, who was specially brought by Bailey June, seemed to have a deep hostility towards her, and even a killing intent. Whoosh! Chu Liwei flicked his wrist, and a dazzling blue-gold light flashed past. Everyone only saw a blur in front of their eyes before they saw a sword appear in Chu Yue's hand. The blue-gold light came from the scabbard. Chu Yue held the scabbard with one hand and raised his other hand, slowly grasping the slender and cold sword hilt. The surrounding power flowed like a river, causing the tassels at the end of the curl to sway gently. Chu Yue's expression gradually darkened as he held his breath. His black, jade-like eyes, which seemed to have sunk into a deep pool, gradually glowed with a piercingly cold light. An indistinct, killing intent silently surged like the fog in the middle of the night. Unknowingly, everything was surrounded. There seemed to be an invisible barrier around her, isolating her from the outside world. It was as if no matter what happened outside, it would not affect her at all. Even at this moment, he was still calm and composed. Some people secretly exchanged glances. This Chuyu, it seems that he's not that simple. Jiang Zhuan met that pair of cold eyes, and in an instant, her entire body turned cold. An indescribable fear suddenly rose from the bottom of her heart. She clenched her teeth and tried her best to calm herself down and suppress her restless heartbeat. What was there to be afraid of? The strength of a rank 8 warrior. How strong could he be? Right now, she was 2 whole ranks higher than the other party. He was just putting on an act. Thinking of this, Jiang Jiwan's mood finally calmed down a little. Clang! Chu Luiyue drew his sword. A streak of rainbow-colored light streaked across the sky. That's some sharp-eyed people's expressions changed, and they immediately sat up straight. Their eyes were fixed on the sword. Those present were all strong people of the current era. What good things had they not seen before? Their eyesight was very sharp. The moment Chu Luiyue took out the Scarlet Heaven sword, someone immediately sensed that something was wrong. This is the divine weapon that the Golden Wings sect and Lingxiao College fought over in the Blue Feather Abyss. That's it. Previously, in the northern region of the Primitive Desolation, Chuyu also used this sword to split open the door of the mysterious space. However, the aura of the sword at that time didn't seem to be so shocking. But this is indeed the same sword. Moreover, didn't Jean D suspect that it was actually a venerable divine weapon? Such an aura, such a pressure. How could a king divine weapon possess it? In fact, although everyone had heard of this news, there were not many who really took it to heart, because it had been too long since a venerable divine weapon appeared in the Divine Ruins world. Moreover, they actually knew the ins and outs of this divine weapon. At that time, the Golden Wings sect and Lingxiao College were fighting over it. In the end, for some reason, Jean Lei died, and Chuyu became the owner of that divine weapon by accident. If it was really a venerable divine weapon, would Lingxiao College be willing to give it up? But what they didn't expect was that Lingxiao College was really willing to give it up. Moreover, because of the mediation of Rong Xiu and the others, the elders didn't even pursue Chu Luiyue. They just let her take away a venerable divine weapon. After all, Lingxiao College was not the same as these aristocratic families. Therefore, at this moment, when they saw the red cloud sword in Chu Luiyue's hand, they only realized in hindsight and were full of shock. I've already said it. Jean D stared at the red cloud sword with bloodshot eyes. Although Chu Luiyue had used the red cloud sword in public before, she just waved it casually and didn't display its true power. In addition, those people's attention was elsewhere at that time, so they didn't pay much attention to it. It was not until now that Chu Luiyue was about to officially take action that they realized that they had made such a big mistake. But now, it was too late for regrets. After all, they couldn't openly snatch something from Lingxiao College's student in their territory, right? However, there were still some people who were quick-witted. Jiang Zhuan also saw it and couldn't help but feel jealous. The things that Bailey June gave her were not bad, and she was very satisfied at the beginning. But compared to a venerable divine weapon, it was nothing. This Chuyu's background was unclear, and he was arrogant and undisciplined, which was very annoying. She really didn't know what the college and Rong Xiu saw in him. Suddenly, Chu Luiyue threw the scabbard into the air. A brilliant ray of light streaked across the air. In the next moment, Chu Luiyue held the sword with both hands and tiptoed. Her figure instantly flew out. She was very agile. She soared into the air. She raised the sword above her head. Whoosh! The surrounding energy of heaven and earth suddenly gathered toward the red cloud sword in a frenzy. In an instant, the world lost its color. It was a shock. Even the energy that was surging toward the wheel of the blue sky, scorching sun, was suddenly blocked by an invisible pressure. It changed direction and rushed into the red cloud sword at an even faster speed. What? Jiang Jiwan's heart skipped a beat. How could a venerable divine weapon be so domineering? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1460. But before she could digest this shock, she saw an even more frightening scene. After forcefully plundering the energy of heaven and earth that the clear sky, scorching sun wheel was devouring, the Scarlet Heaven Sword actually started to shake the power of the wheel. The two wheels that were originally rotating in perfect harmony were now affected by the terrifying pressure and actually started to shake. Crack, crack! In the middle of the green and white wheels, a section suddenly staggered and let out an ear-piercing sound. The two forces instantly deviated from each other. They started to strangle each other. Jiang Jiwon's heart suddenly skipped a beat. The trace of fear that she had buried deep in her heart finally surged up at this moment. It easily drowned her. How could this be? How could this be? The duel had not officially started, and her opponent had only used a sword. It actually directly destroyed her attack. This move was a trump card that she had seriously practiced when she was following Bailey June. Other than the two of them, no one else knew that she would use this move. On one hand, she did not want to expose her identity. On the other hand, she wanted to get rid of Chuyu directly. So, she directly chose this move. Who knew swoosh? Jiang Jiwon's mind raced as she quickly took out the second God's Pearl. It shot out. Bang! The God's Pearl entered the center. A vast and terrifying power surged out. In the blink of an eye, the bright white God's power quickly spread out and enveloped the entire huge clear sky, scorching sun wheel. The white color was still white, and the green color also became white. The two wheels that were about to go berserk were finally controlled in time. The green God's power was devoured and completely merged with the small white wheel inside. The aura on it seemed to be even stronger than before. It continued to close in on Chu Luwei. However, this scene caused many people to frown and shake their heads repeatedly. The balance between the two gods' powers was broken by Chu Yu, and little Lu was unable to do anything about it. He could only add another God's Pearl to completely cover his green God's power and barely control it. But in this way, doesn't it mean that he didn't do anything at all and only threw out two God's Pearls to deal with his competition? Bailey June is really good to him. He actually took out two God's Pearls so casually. I think we might be able to pull out a few more boosts later. If that's the case, why don't we just let Bailey June come up and fight with Chuyu? Isn't that more direct and convenient? Everyone discussed animatedly, and there was no lack of ridicule. They were willing to give Bailey June face, but it did not mean that they were afraid of him. Look at this match. What did it look like? What a joke. That little Lu is representing us. His actions are really shameful. If I had known this would happen, I would have sent someone stronger up there. Isn't it too late to say that now? I only hope that after using so many methods, he won't lose in the end. That's hard to say. Chuyu hasn't officially made his move yet. Bailey June was also anxious when he saw this. How could he have thought that Chuyu actually had a venerable artifact? But a mere rank 8 warrior shouldn't even have the strength to pick up a venerable artifact. So how did he unleash its might and power? Chu Luwei did not care about the commotion outside and held her breath in concentration. In fact, everything happened in the blink of an eye. Scarlet Heaven Sword's efficiency in devouring the energy of heaven and earth was very high. Under normal circumstances, she could swing her sword in the blink of an eye. But today, she deliberately slowed down her movements. The huge wheel that was emitting a dazzling light was already in front of her. It was only a few steps away from Chu Luwei. Chu Luwei's eyes sharpened. The force in her limbs and bones seemed to have been summoned and surged out together. Then, she decisively swung her sword. Scarlet Heaven Sword. Break. Swoosh. The long sword slashed down. Kacha. A subtle but clear sound suddenly came from the wheel. Jiang Jiwon's smile suddenly froze. She looked in horror at a neat crack that appeared in the middle of the wheel. In the next moment, the wheel broke. The energy scattered in all directions. Boom! Following this shocking explosion, The originally majestic will transformed into countless specks of light that swept out in all directions. Jiang Juan was the first to bear the brunt of the impact. Her body was instantly sent flying. Bam! She landed heavily on the ground and even slid quite a distance. A long trail of blood was left on the ground. Her back was burning with pain, and her internal organs felt like they were being crushed by something. Jiang Jiwon spat out a mouthful of blood. She had not recovered from her injuries to begin with, and now that she was injured again, she was even more miserable and almost fainted. Bailey June suddenly stood up. He waved his sleeves and was about to attack. However, at this moment, Rong Xiu suddenly looked over. There was a faint smile on his devilish face, but his eyes were as deep as the sea and as sharp as a knife. Clan leader, you seem to be very concerned about this person. The competition is not over yet. Wouldn't it be inappropriate for you to attack? You! Bailey Chun choked on his words. He was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. He gritted his teeth and finally sat back down. I know. There was dead silence. Princess Yao. Chu Luiyue suddenly tilted her head and looked at Yao Bin, who was standing at the side. He subconsciously looked over, and there was still a look of shock on his face. It was obvious that Chu Luiyue's current abilities had far exceeded his expectations. Did you see it clearly just now? Chu Luiyue curved her lips into a smile. That's how I won that day. Then she looked around. Her tone was still casual and calm, and her smile was gentle. Everyone, if there's anyone who didn't see it clearly, I can demonstrate it again. Digression. Yesterday, I broke my hand washing socks. I cried because of my stupidity. After a night, it's already much better. Sob, sob, sob. Update will continue at 6 o'clock p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from love. Chapter 1461. Demonstrate again? Even if he had the strength to swing his sword again, Lil Lu might not be alive enough to withstand a second strike. Chuyu, don't go too far. Before Yao Bin could say anything, Bailey June was the first to reprimand him. Chu Luiyue turned around and blinked at Bailey June. Clan leader Bailey, I'm just explaining to everyone. How's that going too far? Suddenly, she had a look of realization. Oh, are you talking about me injuring this person? But we're in a competition, so there has to be a winner, right? Also, we've only exchanged one move. She looked innocent, as if she was at a loss of what to do. Puffed. A low chuckle suddenly came from the quiet crowd, but it was quickly suppressed. However, this chuckle seemed to have flipped a switch. The originally cold and solemn atmosphere became subtle. Many people could not help but laugh and secretly exchange glances with each other. One move. Wasn't it just one move? From beginning to end, Chu had only swung his sword once. What's more, he didn't do anything. In the end, it was Lil Lu who did not live up to expectations. She could not win with 2 of Bailey June's divine pearls, and was even beaten to a pulp by her opponent. Not only did Bailey June not feel embarrassed, he even had the cheek to be angry here. What a joke. Originally, everyone thought that those who could be brought here by him must have top-notch talents. Now, it was obvious that she was an idiot who could not handle the situation. They really did not know what Bailey June was thinking. No one spoke, and the scene was very quiet. However, everyone's thoughts were more or less expressed on their faces. How could Bailey June not see it? After living for so long, how could he not see the mockery and ridicule of others? He could not feel it. Those people looked at Jiang Juan on the ground, then looked at Bailey June with meaningful eyes. Bailey June felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. His face was red and his throat was tight. For a moment, he did not know how to refute. It was a competition. It was a battle. Moreover, it was an extremely crucial match. He couldn't possibly stop them from making a move. Bailey June's blood was rushing through his veins. His heart was beating like a drum, and his temples were throbbing. He was about to explode from anger. He glanced at Jiang Ji-won, feeling both angry and distressed. Get up. If it weren't for the fact that there were so many people watching, he would have personally helped her up. But Rongxio's words just now made him vigilant, so he didn't dare to be too presumptuous. So he had no choice but to comply. Jiang Jiwan also felt wronged. How could she have known that this Chu Yu was actually so terrifying? Once the Venerable One's divine weapon was used, it was simply unstoppable. What was the point of talking about winning or losing? In front of so many people, with the strength of a demigod, he lost to the opponent's rank 8 warrior. This was worse than killing her. She was as proud and complacent as she was at the beginning, and now she was as angry and resentful as she was angry. She struggled to get up, pulling at her wound. It was so painful that her vision turned black. Seeing the mottled bloodstains on the ground, she was shocked, and her hatred for the young man in front of her increased. This Chu Yu, was he here specifically to subdue her? At this moment, Chu Liyue suddenly took a step forward. Jiang Jiwan was frightened and subconsciously took a few steps back. In a moment of carelessness, she fell to the ground again. More blood oozed out of the wounds on her body. It was mottled and messy, and she looked very miserable. "You, what else do you want?" Because of nervousness and fear, Jiang Jiwan's voice became shrill and ear-piercing. Chu Liyue looked at her in surprise. "I just wanted to ask if you were going to admit defeat. Why are you so nervous?" "I dash." Jiang Jiwan's face turned red and white. She felt that she had completely lost her face. And Bailey Jun had already turned his eyes away. Out of sight, out of mind. He really hated to see Jiang Jiwan's useless and cowardly appearance. In the past, Jiang Jiwan was confident, generous, and likable. Why did it suddenly become like this now? There were so many top experts in the Divine Ruins world present, and each of them had a high status. If they saw this scene, who knew how they would mock him behind his back? And Yuntian Tower. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but look at Rongxio, only to see the man leaning against the back of the chair with a relaxed expression and a lazy posture. His thin scarlet lips were slightly raised, as if he was smiling. Smiling? At this time, Rongxio could still smile? Didn't he think that this was a loss of face for Yuntian Tower? "Holy Son, say a few words." Bailey Jun couldn't help but frown and speak. Rongxio tilted his head and looked over. His expression was gentle, but his eyes were cold. He had a faint smile on his face. "What does the Patriarch want I to say?" "Say what?" Of course, it was to speak up for Jiang Jiwan. Bailey Chun was infuriated. Rongxio was clearly doing this on purpose. "Of course, it's about this match." Bailey Jun reminded him vaguely. As long as Rongxio spoke, he represented Yuntian Tower's position. Chu Yu probably couldn't go too far. As if he understood Rongxio's hint, Rongxio looked enlightened. He turned his gaze and looked at the arena. "Chu Yu," he spoke lazily. His voice was low, but it was full of magnetism. It easily tugged at people's heartstrings without batting an eyelid. Everyone pricked up their ears. Then, they heard Rongxio say with a faint smile, "You did well." Dead silence. Bailey Jun's expression instantly cracked. Jiang Jiwan looked like she was struck by lightning. She was about to go crazy. She thought Rongxio would speak up for them, but he actually wanted to praise Chu Yu. Son of God. Bailey Jun tried to suppress the anger in his heart, but his eyes were burning with flames. "Little Lu is a member of Yuntian Tower, you Patriarch. You just came out of seclusion not long ago. There are some things that you don't know." Rongxio interrupted him and chuckled. "From the beginning to the end, I stood on junior brother Chu Yu's side, just like the Academy. Now that she had won and had proven her strength and innocence, could it be that she was still not worthy of a compliment?" Rongxio said slowly. Bailey Jun suddenly choked. He knew. Of course he knew. Jiang Jiwan had told him before that Rongxio took great care of Chu Yu. After hearing this, he naturally didn't have a good impression of Chu Yu. This time, he came with the intention of destroying Chu Yu's prestige. He was so focused on helping Jiang Jiwan vent her anger that he completely forgot about this. Only now did he realize that Rongxio had drawn a line between them from the beginning to the end. It was their own business to lose face. What did it have to do with him? Chu Liyue smiled. her eyes curved. "Thank you, Your Highness." Then, she looked at Jiang Juan and raised her eyebrows. "It seems that you still don't want to admit defeat." With that, she took another step forward. This step was like stepping on Jiang Juan's heart. She stopped breathing and shouted almost reflexively, "I admit defeat." Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1462. Because of her nervousness and fear, she shouted quickly and hurriedly. She even lost her voice. It was as if she was begging for mercy when someone grabbed her by the neck. Many people sneered, their faces full of sarcasm. That's it. She was really unpresentable. It seemed that Bailey June was really old and muddle-headed. Moreover, Rongshio's words just now were very meaningful. The two people with the highest status, Yin Tianke and Li Qingshan, clearly had a great disagreement. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were on opposite sides. It was just that they had not completely shed all pretense of cordiality. However, this day might not be long in coming. Chu Liwen nodded in satisfaction, then looked at Yao Bin. "Princess Yao, I wonder if you're satisfied with this competition?" Yao Bin looked at the scene in front of him in a daze, his mood complicated. In a short time, the situation had taken a turn for the worse. He originally thought that Chu Yu's speech was merely an excuse for him to absolve himself, and it was also extremely absurd, not knowing the immensity of heaven and earth. But reality slapped him in the face. At this moment, when he met that pair of black and bright eyes, he felt his face burning. But it could not be helped. Before the results came out, who would have thought that Chu Yu would win? But not only did he win, but he won beautifully. Ew. Yao Bin's hands clenched and loosened. In the end, he could only sigh. "I believe your previous explanation and am willing to keep my promise. From now on, I will not suspect that you have any unusual relationship with the Black Demon Cave." Yao Bin took a while to accept reality, but it could be said that he was decisive. Then, he took a step forward and cupped his hands at Chu Luiyue. "Previously, I misunderstood you, so I apologize to you." Chu Luiyue tilted her head and smiled. "Princess Yao is too polite. I know that you also want to find out the truth, and I can take this opportunity to clear my name. It's a good thing. You don't have to take it to heart." The reason why Yao Bin was so aggressive toward her previously was that he believed in his heart that Chu Luiyue had something going on with Black Demon Cave. Purple Light County and the Black Demon Cave had a blood feud, so it was normal for him to have such a reaction. What was rare was that after knowing that he was wrong, he could still apologize in public. He had completely let go of his pride, which could be considered magnanimous and upright. Chu Luiyue had a good impression of him. If he wanted to deal with the Black Demon Cave in the future, he might be able to join forces with them. Of course, this was a matter for the future. This thought flashed through Chu Yue's mind, but she quickly suppressed it. She raised her head slightly and flicked her wrist. Clang! He sheathed his sword. With a brilliant flash of light, Scarlet Heaven's sword returned to her hand. In the surroundings, many gazes fell upon Scarlet Heaven's sword. Chu Yue's eyes flickered as he sneered in his heart. Today, she took out the Scarlet Heaven's sword, which would definitely attract a lot of trouble. Right now, these people were restraining themselves for the sake of the Academy. However, in the future, it was hard to say. He's just relying on the divine might of the Venerable One's divine weapon. A low voice that was obviously suppressing something was heard. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Jiang Juan, who had just turned around and was about to retreat. He took a step forward and blocked the other party's path. Wait. Jiang Juan's heart skipped a beat. She looked up at Chu Luiyue with a trace of panic in her eyes. What are you doing? I should be the one asking you that." Chu Luiyue smiled. "Don't tell me you don't understand the principle of accepting defeat. I'm still here." "What do you mean by that sentence just now?" Everyone looked over again. Jiang Juan was extremely nervous. The terrifying experience from the fight just now had left a heavy shadow on her. She almost didn't have the courage to face Chu Luiyue again. However, she was still unwilling to accept it. Avoiding Chu Luiyue's intimidating gaze, Jiang Juan lowered her head. "I didn't say anything. It seems that you're very dissatisfied with the result of the fight just now. Faced with Chu Liuyue's questioning, Jiang Juan was about to break down. She was already in a bad mood after losing. Everyone was praising Chu Yu and belittling her, as if there was a huge gap between them. However, that was not the case. If she also had a venerable artifact, how could she have lost? Therefore, Jiang Juan hesitated for a moment and chose to admit it. I'm just telling the truth. She gritted her teeth. If you don't use that venerable artifact and fight with me, it's still unknown who will win. The surroundings were silent for a moment. Everyone could hear the provocation in her words. Bailey June opened his mouth and wanted to stop her. However, after thinking about it, he swallowed those words. In fact, he also thought so in his heart. He could tell that Chu Yu's strength was much more powerful than ordinary cultivators of the same level, but it was not so incredible. The most important thing was still that venerable artifact. Chu Liyue stared at Jiang Juan for a while and suddenly smiled. Since you think so, then let's have another fight? As soon as she said that, everyone was shocked. Jiang Juan suddenly looked up and looked at her in disbelief. What did you say? Since you're not convinced, then let's change the method and beat you until you're convinced. Chu Liyue smiled, but every word she said was as sharp as a knife. It was precisely this casual attitude that made Jiang Juan's anger explode in an instant. The other party had a venerable artifact. She could not beat him. But if it was a normal fight, how could she not win? However, if that's the case, I won't suppress my strength anymore. Chu Liyue added. Ninth stage warrior? Jiang Jiwan did not care. She seemed to be afraid that Chu Liyue would go back on her words and immediately said, Okay, then it's a deal. Digression. The sixth watch might be a little later, about 6:30 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1463. Just like that, the two of them decided on a new match with just a few words. No one stopped them. Some people wanted to see if Chu Yu really had the strength to win against a demigod without the venerable artifact. Some people wanted to test the true level of Chu Yu's combat strength. There were also people who purely wanted to watch the show and didn't mind blowing things up. The only people who were worried were the people from Lingxiao College. This kid, Elder Bo Yin, wanted to dissuade them, but before he could say anything, the two of them had already decided. Moreover, this matter was proposed by Chu Yu himself. If he objected, he would look a little guilty. Bo Yin, don't worry. That kid won't lose so easily. Elder Hua Feng leaned closer and said in a low voice. Elder Bo Yin turned his head and glanced at him. How could he be so sure? There was still a difference between a rank 9 warrior and a demigod. Elder Hua Feng suddenly chuckled, touched his chin, and looked at the field. Others didn't know, but he knew. That kid had many trump cards. If he didn't allow him to use Scarlet Heaven's Sword, he could still use other trump cards. Poor Xiao Lu. He was covered in wounds and thought that he had a chance to turn the tables. There was also Bailey June. If he still had a bit of rationality, he wouldn't agree to the second match now. He didn't think about it. Chu Yu suppressed his strength to that of a rank 8 warrior and was still able to wield Scarlet Heaven's Sword. How could an ordinary person compare to him? Seeing Elder Hua Feng's expression of waiting to watch a good show, Elder Bo Yin felt a little strange, but his heart calmed down a lot. He also turned his head, intending to see how things would develop. Jiang Juan took out a pill and swallowed it. A warm and gentle force instantly spread to her limbs and bones. This made her feel much better. Dragging a heavily injured body, her combat strength would definitely be greatly reduced. But she wanted to win too much. What did he eat just now? Why do I smell the scent of a bewildering fragrance pill? Elder Wan Zhang's nose twitched as he frowned slightly. This kind of pill was very precious and could only be refined by venerable doctors. And its effect was extremely special. This kind of medicinal pill could, for a short period of time, allow a cultivator to ignore their injuries and unleash their strongest power. Sometimes, it could even allow a heavily injured person to display strength that exceeded their normal level. However, The side effects of this bewildering fragrance pill were also very strong. This was because this was equivalent to overdrafting the cultivator's physical strength and energy. After half an incense stick of time passed, the body of the person who had taken the pill would rapidly deteriorate. If it was not treated in time, it would leave irreversible damage. Therefore, under normal circumstances, only in a life and death situation would people be willing to use this thing. This was just a competition. It had to be said that Jiang Ji-won was going all out by doing this. That is indeed the bewitching fragrance pill. Rong Xiu said calmly. Elder Wan Zheng's frown deepened. It's just a competition, not a life and death battle. What is he trying to do? Their precious disciple had a good temper and was not someone to be bullied. Rong Xiu looked at the field. Chu Yue's shoulders and back were straight, like a pine tree. After seeing Jiang Ji-won take the bewitching fragrance pill, she raised her eyebrows slightly, seemingly a little surprised. Rong Xiu lowered his eyes slightly, hiding the smile that flashed across his eyes. Her acting was really realistic. She was clearly waiting for her opponent to do this, but she still pretended to be surprised. It seemed that this time, she was determined to completely take care of her opponent. Chu Liyue did it on purpose. It was not like she had nothing better to do. Did she want to do this again just to prove that she was stronger than her opponent? Or did she take the initiative to give up the venerable artifact and fight with her opponent barehanded? Her opponent was brainless, but it did not mean that she was the same. This move was to retreat in order to advance. It cannot be simpler. Her opponent's desire to win was very strong. At this time, as long as there was a slight chance of winning, her opponent would grab it tightly. Chu Liyue thought to herself, Ba. She had always been kind and could not bear to see others being tortured. Her opponent was about to go crazy and only wanted to die. How could she bear to look on helplessly? It was better to be kind and help Buddha all the way to the west. Please. Chu Liyue seemed to have heard the words about the bewitching fragrance pill from the people around her. She frowned slightly and looked slightly nervous. Jiang Ji-won clenched her fists. The wounds on her body did not hurt anymore, and there was constantly energy surging from all parts of her body. It gathered in her dantian. It had been a long time since she felt so full of energy, and her combat strength was off the charts. Although the bewitching fragrance pill had side effects, she was certain that she could definitely take care of her opponent within half an incense's time. In fact, it would only take one move. Jiang Ji-won's confidence increased greatly, as if she could already imagine the scene after she won. She was filled with excitement, and the expression on her face was almost impossible to hide. She did not want to hide it either. The next moment, she crossed her hands in front of her. The turbulent force gathered. The aura around her increased greatly. After a while, a cry of surprise came from the crowd. Why is her aura still increasing? Is she going to break through to the exalted god realm? Not long after that, a light appeared between Jiang Ji-won's brows. A totem appeared clearly, and the pressure on her body officially broke through to the exalted god realm. Relying on the power of the bewitching fragrance pill, she forcefully raised her realm temporarily. Many people's expressions changed slightly. When they looked at Chu Liyue again, they could not help but shake their heads. Although this was very dangerous, it was very useful. A exalted god powerhouse could easily crush a stage 9 warrior with one hand, right? Jiang Ji-won felt a tearing pain in her body. It was caused by forcefully raising her realm. But she did not care. As long as she could win, what did this matter? Die. She threw out a punch. It was simple and direct. At this time, tyrannical strength was better than any tricks. The shadows of her fists were everywhere, heading straight for Chu Liyue's face. She did not move. Why isn't Chu Yu moving? Is he stupid? Some people secretly frowned. Even if he could not win, he could run. What was the point of standing there in a daze? However, just as that terrifying power was about to crush and devour Chu Liyue, a clear cry suddenly resounded through the world. Screech! A crimson gold light burst out from Chu Liyue's body and instantly flourished. Then, a huge figure appeared in front of Chu Luwei. Its entire body was golden, and its pressure was impressive. Crimson gold heavenly phoenix. Everyone was shocked on the spot. Some of them could not even suppress their impulse and directly stood up. They stared dumbfoundedly at the ancient mythological beast that had suddenly appeared. How? That's Chu Yu's contracted divine beast. Someone suddenly shrieked with a trembling voice. Boom! Dumpling's wings flapped, and the heavy shadows of the fists dissipated with a loud bang. Jiang Jiwan was also shocked. Her whole body was cold, and great fear surged in her heart. Crimson gold heavenly phoenix, when did this happen? Dumpling, Chu Luwei said with a smile. Bring this person to have a good walk. Screech. Dumpling leaned down and clamped Jiang Jiwan with its claws. It flew up. Chu Luwei touched his chin. Half an instant's time. It would be over after 2 rounds. Digression. Tomorrow is the 11th of the double 11. I don't know if I'm going to write or look at Taobao at night. Sob. Chapter 1464. Dumpling's extremely sharp claws pierced through Jiang Jiwan's skin and dug deep in her flesh. The sharp pain caused Jiang Jiwan's face to turn ghastly pale. Pain! The reddish-gold flame burned as if it was going to roast and devour her. Jiang Jiwan was shocked and terrified as she struggled with all her might. However, her strength was nothing in front of the reddish-gold celestial phoenix. It was true that she had broken through to the great deity level, but the other party was an ancient divine beast. The two of them were not on the same level at all. What was there to fight over? It was a complete suppression. Jiang Jiwan endured the pain and forced herself to look down. She was shocked to find that she was being taken away. Where did this beast want to take her? If she could not break free after half an hour, then she was done for. Deep fear surged in Jiang Jiwan's heart. She hurriedly mobilized all the strength in her body, wanting to struggle out. Let me down, you beast. Let me go. Dumpling's gaze turned cold. She was courting death. Crack! Dumpling flew even faster while exerting force with its claws. It actually broke a few of Jiang Jiwan's ribs. Hiss! Jiang Jiwan sucked in a breath of cold air from the pain. Her whole body trembled. She even vaguely felt that those sharp claws were about to dig out her internal organs. Immense fear surged in her heart. Jiang Jiwan's pale lips trembled. She could not rely on herself. She was afraid that, help, clan smack. Dumpling swung one of its wings down and directly slapped Jiang Jiwan's head. There was a dull thud. Jiang Jiwan's vision turned black as she fainted right away. Dumpling leisurely carried the stiff Jiang Jiwan, just like that, and flew further away. Master said that he had to make 2 rounds. In the square, everyone was stunned by this sudden scene. For a long time, no one made a sound. She left just like that? What was going on? Seeing Jiang Jiwan being taken away, Bailey Jun was the first to react. He suddenly stood up and stared at Chu Luwei. Chu Yu, what are you doing? His stern voice was filled with anger. Chu Luwei narrowed his eyes and then smiled. Clan leader Bailey, didn't everyone see clearly what I was doing? I'm competing. What kind of competition is this? That reddish gold celestial phoenix, that crimson gold celestial phoenix is my contracted divine beast. There's nothing wrong with me summoning it to battle, right? Chu Yue's lips curved up, but her eyes were cold and clear. I've already promised not to use that divine artifact. Could it be that I'm not even allowed to summon magical beasts? Bailey Junes. Of course, there was no such logic in the world. Any cultivator who had a contract with a magical beast would always tacitly agree that the magical beast was one with them. There was nothing wrong with that. It was just that the contracted magical beast he had summoned was too shocking. Ancient divine beast. Only a few of the people present had seen it before, let alone a contract. If you think I'm breaking the rules by summoning Dumpling, then shouldn't you have said it in advance? Isn't it a bit late to mention it now? Chu Luwei said slowly. Bailey June's face turned pale. Say it in advance. How would he have thought that this ordinary-looking youth would actually have such a trump card hidden up his sleeve? If he had known, he wouldn't have let Jiang Ji-won fight. But it was too late to say anything now. He looked up and saw that Jiang Ji-won had been taken further away. That reddish-gold, celestial phoenix had no intention of coming back. Half an hour would pass soon. If Jiang Ji-won couldn't be treated in time, then ask that reddish-gold celestial phoenix to bring Yuan Xiao Lu back immediately. If anything happens to her, I won't let you go. Chu Luiyue blinked. But isn't the competition still ongoing? Bailey June was fuming. What competition? I'm ordering you to stop the competition immediately. Chu Luiyue's smile was polite but cold. Patriarch Bailey, you don't seem to have the right to say that right now. Bailey June had been the patriarch of Yuntian Tower for 100 years. He had always been high and mighty. When had he ever been refuted like this? And in front of so many people. Chu Luiyue's words ignited the fire in his heart that had been suppressed for a long time. How dare you? Before he finished his words, he raised his hand and a force flew out. The force turned into a sword and flew towards Chu Luiyue's chest. The sound of air breaking was ear-piercing. Everyone's expression changed. No one expected that Bailey June would suddenly make a move. Elder Bo Yin and Elder Wan Zheng made a move together. Chu Yu, be careful. However, there was one person who was faster than them. A golden stream of light streaked across the sky and instantly transformed into a huge net. It arrived first and surrounded the sword. Then it quickly tightened. Bang! A crisp sound was heard. The sword shattered with a loud bang. The terrifying force spread in all directions, but it was quickly swallowed by the golden net and disappeared without a sound. Then, the golden net quickly condensed into a small butterfly. It paused on Chu Luiyue's shoulder for a while, before quietly dissipating. Chu Luiyue's eyes flickered. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. From the beginning to the end, Bailey June's force did not even touch Chu Luiyue's body. Everyone quieted down. Their eyes wandered back and forth between Rong Xiu and Bailey June. They all had different thoughts. The one who made a move was actually Rong Xiu. Although they had long known that these two people were not on good terms, they had always thought that Rong Xiu and Bailey June would not fall out with each other for the sake of the Yuntian Tower and other factors. However, they did not expect everything to happen so quickly. Rong Xiu's interference was akin to slapping Bailey June's face in front of everyone. There was no turning back now that he had made a scene in front of so many people. Rong Xiu had always been far-sighted and strategizing. It was impossible that he did not know how far the situation would go once he made a move. However, he still did it. Moreover, he did it without hesitation. Even Elder Wan Zheng and the others were a step slower. The atmosphere was tense and the space was frozen. Bailey June's expression was extremely ugly. He stared at Rong Xiu. Your Highness, what is the meaning of this? He had only been in seclusion for a few years, but the moment he came out, the world had changed. Now, Rong Xiu was becoming more and more arrogant. He actually dared to fight him in public. Where was his face? What Bailey June did not know was that Rong Xiu did not care about his face at all. The reason why he made a move just now was very simple. Of course, I will protect my people, said Qin Wentian. His expression was open and magnanimous, and his voice was low and pleasant. He leaned against the back of the chair, his posture languid and calm. It was as if he did not care about what happened just now at all. The competition is still going on. Patriarch, if you act so rashly, won't others think that Yuntian Tower can't afford to lose? Before Bailey June could fly into a rage, Rong Xiu spoke first. A hint of a smile flashed across his lips as he reminded, everyone is still watching. You can afford to lose face, but don't drag Yuntian Tower down with you. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1465. Bailey June had never been so embarrassed. However, Rong Xiu's attitude was firm and reasonable. He didn't know how to refute it. What shocked him even more was that Rong Xiu's strength seemed to be stronger than he expected. Indeed, he only used 50% of his strength in that attack, but the fact that Rong Xiao could block it so easily was already very telling. After calming down for a moment, he took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed the resentment and anger in his heart. He couldn't drag it on any longer. Jiang Jiwan's body couldn't hold on for that long. Thinking of this, Bailey June took a deep breath and looked at Chu Luiwei. In that case, this old man will represent her to admit defeat. This way, the competition can finally end. Everyone looked at each other. Bailey Chun really treated that person called Xiao Lu well. Since you've said so, of course there's no problem. Chu Luiwei smiled. Bailey June snorted and sat back on the chair. However, after waiting for a while, the crimson gold heavenly phoenix didn't return with Jiang Juan. His brows furrowed once more as he questioned, Chu Yu, why is your crimson gold heavenly phoenix still wandering around there? There wasn't much time left. Chu Luiwei smiled. Oh, you're talking about that. Dumpling hasn't come out to play for a while. It's rare for her to come out, so she's wild. It might take a while for her to come back. Bailey June suddenly became anxious. A while? Then wouldn't it be meaningless for me to take the initiative to compromise? You ask it to come back immediately. Xiao Lu is injured and needs to be treated as soon as possible. Chu Luiwei looked troubled. But Dumpling is lively and sometimes doesn't listen to me. You see, Bailey June was about to die of anger. What nonsense are you talking about? Since it's your contracted magical beast, it should obey you. If you ask it to come back, would it dare to disobey? How dare it? Chu Luiwei replied immediately. She blinked her eyes and smiled apologetically. Oh, you probably don't know, but Dumpling is an ancient divine beast, so its temper is a bit bigger. Sometimes, even I can't do anything about it. The corners of everyone's mouths twitched. He didn't know. Who would know such a thing? They didn't have any contracts with ancient divine beasts. This Chu Yu's mouth was really poisonous. Patriarch. Rong Xiao suddenly tilted his head and smiled faintly. When Xiao Lu swallowed the bewildering fragrance pill, he should have thought of this result. We have to be responsible for our own choices, don't we? Bailey June was speechless. He was anxious and regretful. However, he did not dare to reveal Jiang Juan's true identity. In that case, his face would be completely lost. In the future, Jiang Juan might not even be able to return to the Yuntian Tower. He could be biased and protective of her, but if it involved the interests of the Yuntian Tower, not to mention Rong Xiao, 36 respected Elder Ming, and the others would not let it go. Therefore, he could only accept it. Time passed by bit. Seeing that half an incense was about to burn out, Bailey June finally couldn't help but speak again. Chu Yu, this old man will say it one last time. If anything happens to Xiao Lu, you will not be able to get away with it. This Chu Yu is clearly doing it on purpose. He stood up. This old man will go personally. If that crimson gold heavenly phoenix did not come back, he could go after it himself. However, just when Bailey June thought that Chu Luiwei would continue to stall for time this time, she suddenly smiled brightly. Patriarch Bailey, why are you in such a hurry? Look, isn't that back? What? Bailey June was stunned and looked up following Chu Luiwei's line of sight. Sure enough, he saw a streak of crimson gold streaking across the sky quickly. It was the crimson gold heavenly phoenix that had left for a while. Chu Luiwei seemed to heave a sigh of relief as she waved at Tuanzi. Dumpling, you're finally back. Didn't you see how anxious Patriarch Bailey was? Don't do this again in the future. Dumpling swung its claws and directly threw Jiang Jiwan's book to the ground. Then it folded its wings and changed back to the size of a palm, squatting on Chu Luiwei's shoulder. Chu Luiwei patted its head. Good job. Dumpling obediently and proudly went forward, wanting to rub her face. But before he could even touch it, he could already feel a wave of coldness assaulting him. Its body stiffened and it obediently turned around. Then, it looked at Rong Xiao, who was not far away with hidden bitterness. It was clearly its master, but it was not allowed to be intimate. Bah! How overbearing! Sooner or later, its master would help it take revenge. Chu Luiwei did not notice the surging undercurrent and looked at Jiang Juan, who was lying motionless on the ground. At this moment, Jiang Juan was covered in blood and bruises, and her face was as pale as a ghost. If it were not for the last weak breath, everyone would have thought that she was dead. Bailey Jun moved and was about to go over. Chu Luiwei was a step ahead and walked to Jiang Jiwan's side. "Don't touch her!" Bailey Jun was frightened and shouted sternly. Chu Luiwei looked up with some surprise, and a trace of confusion appeared in her eyes. "I just want to help take a look at her injuries. Don't worry, I'm also a celestial physician. Moreover, even if she really wanted to do something, she wouldn't do it in front of so many people." This Bailey clan leader was truly too concerned that his mind was in a mess. Chu Luiwei lowered her eyes slightly, and a deep thought flashed through her mind. If she remembered correctly, this Bailey family leader had never married in his life and had no children. Moreover, he was very strict and harsh. The only person he cared about so much seemed to be... Thinking of this, Chu Luiwei's heart skipped a beat. She raised her hand and reached out to his face. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1466. Bailey Jun's heart jumped to his throat when he saw this scene. Stop! Before he could finish his sentence, Chu Luiwei's fingertips had already touched the other party's cheek. Chu Luiwei immediately understood what was going on, and her lips slowly curled into a smile. It's true. The person lying on the ground was motionless. Chu Luiwei's hand had already touched the other party's chin. Then, she gently rubbed her fingertips. As if disturbed by her movements, the other party frowned and struggled to open her eyes. Jiang Jiwan had fainted and was unconscious. At some point, she suddenly felt that her face was a little itchy, and it made her very uncomfortable. The last bit of rationality she had left made her realize that the situation was not good. "Who's touching my face?" The moment she opened her eyes, the dazzling sunlight turned her vision white. After a few seconds, she finally saw the face of the person in front of her. "Ah!" Jiang Juan let out a shrill scream of horror. She almost reflexively raised her hand to push the other party away. However, at this time, many of her bones were broken, and her internal organs were squeezed into a ball. She was probably seriously injured. She did not even have the strength to raise her hand, let alone push the other party away. When she realized this, resentment and hatred surged in her heart. Chu Luiwei seemed to be startled by her scream. Her body leaned back slightly, but her hand was still on Jiang Jiwan's face. "Don't worry, the competition is over. I'll help you wipe the blood." "Wipe what?" You go away." Jiang Jiwan desperately wanted to retreat. Unfortunately, she was almost paralyzed at this time. Her movements only made her look like a powerless worm. "Didn't you hear what she said? You don't have to interfere." Bailey Jun hurried over. Chu Luiwei seemed to be at a loss. I really didn't want to do anything. Hey, what's this?" As she spoke, she flicked her wrist, and a translucent mask, as thin as a cicada's wing, appeared in her hand. Jiang Jiwan felt a burning pain on her face. "It hurts." In order to make this mask more comfortable, she had specially used a little method to reinforce it. If she wanted to take it off, she had to be very careful. Chu Luiwei's fears tearing almost tore off half of her face. How could she not be in pain? But very quickly, the deathly silent atmosphere made her suddenly realize what had happened. She subconsciously raised her head and looked around. Everyone was looking at her with different expressions and strange gazes. Her face. Only then did Jiang Jiwan come back to her senses. Her heart was suddenly filled with deep fear. His entire body was ice cold. Bailey Jun, who was already a few steps away, suddenly stopped, his lips trembling. "It's over." Elder Bo Yin suddenly stood up, his face solemn. "Jiang Jiwan, why are you here?" They couldn't be more familiar with this face. This question also made the remaining people, who were still uncertain, come to a realization. So this is Jiang Jiwan? Wasn't she expelled from Lingxiao College? Why is she here again today? I heard that she grew up with Bailey Jun and was very pampered. Her status in Yuntian Tower is very high. Didn't you see how Yuntian Tower still chose to take her in after she was expelled and embarrassed? I really don't know what's so good about her. From the competition just now, it seems like her talent is average. Also, she's narrow-minded and not presentable. In the past, Bailey June seemed to have planned for her to be engaged to Rongxiu. However, Rongxiu directly chose his own princess and didn't give her a chance at all. Now it seems like he already knew what Jiang Juan was like and never liked her, right? If I were Jiang Juan, I would hide after being expelled from Lingxiao College. I didn't expect her to be so thick-skinned. She actually used Bailey June's pampering to change her appearance and come here. Does she really not know how embarrassing this is? After today, she probably won't have any reputation in the world of God anymore, right? All kinds of discussions were unbearable to the ears. Jiang Ziyuan's body trembled, and tears streamed down her face. She looked at Bailey June with red eyes. Now, only the clan leader could save her. I brought her here. Bailey Chun closed his eyes and enunciated each and every word clearly. At this point, there were some things that he had to face. Elder Bo Yin sneered. We have all seen that. Clan leader Bailey, you know what I'm asking? Jiang Juan had already been expelled from Lingxiao College. According to the rules, she was not allowed to take half a step into Lingxiao College's territory. Now, Bailey June actually brought her here? Who was this slap in the face? Bailey June was rarely questioned like this. At this time, he was also angry. Yuan Yuan is a member of Yuntian Tower. So what if I brought her here? At this point, he was even angrier. Speaking of which, Yuan Yuan's performance in the school has always been good. Now, just because she made a small mistake, you guys expelled her. Isn't it too much? Elder Bo Yin was so angry that he laughed. His eyes were like knives, sweeping across Jiang Juan. Jiang Juan lowered her head guiltily. A small mistake? Clan leader Bailey, it seems that there are some things that you don't know. Didn't Jiang Ji-won tell you why she was expelled? Bailey June frowned. He felt that something was wrong. This tone sounded... At this time, a sharp pain suddenly came from Jiang Ji-won's body. She couldn't help but let out a shrill scream. Bailey June quickly ran over and helped her up. Yuan Yuan, what happened to you? Jiang Ji-won kept vomiting blood and couldn't say a word. The blood was faintly black. Chu Luiyue glanced at her and kindly reminded her. It seems like half an hour has passed since she took the fragrance pill. Her Yuan meridian is starting to break. Digression. I didn't sleep well last night. I feel like I've been hollowed out. Continue at 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1467. How could this be? Bailey June was not a celestial physician, but he knew a lot about the intoxicating fragrance pill. This was because Jiang Juan had asked him for this pill. When she came to the Yuntian Tower, she was poor and had nothing on her. She didn't even have the basic necessities, let alone a high-grade and precious pill like the intoxicating fragrance pill. Fortunately, Bailey June came out of seclusion. As the head of the Yuntian Tower, it was easy for Bailey June to get this pill. Of course, he had asked around before and knew that the side effects of taking the intoxicating fragrance pill were very serious. It had to be treated within half an hour, otherwise it would cause serious damage to the cultivator's body. But he didn't expect it to be so terrible. Her Yuan meridian was broken. Why did this happen all of a sudden? Jiang Ji-won wailed in pain. Her entire body, inside and out, felt as if something was nibbling on it. Her flesh, blood, tendons, and bones, her Yuan meridian. The indescribable pain and numbness intertwined, almost making her want to die. Head, save me. Please save me. Jiang Juan struggled to say something, and her syllables were unclear. She didn't even have the strength to finish a sentence. Seeing her like this, Bailey Chun felt terrible and hurriedly shouted, "Don't worry. Someone help." No one answered. The Spirit Firmament Academy would definitely not lend a hand. As for the other celestial physician present, they were not stupid. Everyone could see that Jiang Zhuan had been completely rejected by Lingxiao College. If they helped, wouldn't it be obvious that they were going against them? Anyone with half a brain would know that it was unnecessary to offend Lingxiao College for such a useless person. As for Bailey Jun's face, Rongxiu was still here. Even he hadn't helped. How could anyone else? He shouted twice, but there was no response. Only then did Bailey Chun realize that something was wrong and looked around. With just a glance, he had already understood everyone's attitude, and he could not help but feel a chill in his heart. Chu Luiwei was standing at the side. Seeing this, the corners of his lips curled up into a smile. Chief Bailey, some of her injuries were caused by me and Dumpling. Why don't I take a look? Before he could finish his words, Bailey Jun glared at him fiercely. His aged eyes seemed to be burning with flames. Isn't it enough that you've made her so miserable? What else do you want to do? I didn't expect you to be so ruthless at such a young age. Vicious and vicious. Elder Wan Zheng rose to his feet and pointed a finger at him. Bailey Jun, watch your mouth. Who did this Bailey Jun think he was, scolding their people in Lingxiao College's territory? His strength was not weak, but they had so many people on their side that they were not to be trifled with either. Lingxiao College had been established in the world of God for thousands of years. How could they be bullied by a brainless and blind Bailey Jun? Rongxiu lowered his eyes slightly, hiding the murderous intent in his eyes. Bailey Jun was warned loudly, and only then did he come back to his senses. He gritted his teeth so hard that they almost broke. Jiang Zhuan struggled and groaned in pain. Her voice gradually weakened, and her face gradually turned from pale to dark. Chu Luiwei took a few steps back, crossed his arms, and watched coldly from the side. Actually, she did not really want to save Jiang Zhuan. It was just that they were in Fong State City now, and she was the only one who had fought with Jiang Zhuan twice. If she really died, Bailey Jun would definitely blame it all on her. Anyway, with the fragrance pill this time, even if Jiang Zhuan didn't die, she would be crippled. In the future, she would probably never be able to embark on the path of cultivation. How easy it would be to die and end all troubles. If she could live and experience how a genius turned into a good-for-nothing, that would be great. However, it seemed that Bailey Jun would rather let Jiang Zhuan die than accept her help. It would save her trouble. It hurts. It's hot. Jiang Zhuan was in so much pain that her head was a little dizzy. Her vision gradually blurred, and she began to mumble something in a low voice. Chu Luiwei raised her head and threw away the human skin mask. Then, she tidied up the messy strands of hair on her forehead, and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. The side effects of taking the fragrance pill were very serious, and it indeed needed to be treated within half an incense stick's time. But in reality, under normal circumstances, the fragrance pill would not immediately cause such serious consequences. When Dumpling brought Jiang Zhuan out just now, she left a flame in her body. Although the flame was small, it was enough to directly ignite the power in Jiang Zhuan's body and break her yuan meridian inch by inch. In just a moment, she could completely turn her into a good-for-nothing. Chu Luiwei had long guessed that she was Jiang Zhuan, because the other party's hostility and targeting were too obvious. Even a person made of mud could not take the provocation time and time again. Moreover, Chu Luiwei was a person who would never let herself be at a disadvantage. Jiang Zhuan would not let go of her, but she did not have so much time and energy to waste on Jiang Zhuan. Today, everything would be settled clearly in this round. Cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Jiang Zhuan felt her consciousness starting to blur. After a long time, she was even numb from the pain. She was like a drowning person, desperately struggling to find a life-saving straw. She originally thought that Bailey Jun could help her, but she waited, and the pain in her body did not lessen at all. A strong sense of despair surged from the depths of her heart and gradually swallowed her. Yuan. Hang in there. Grandpa will bring you back. Bailey Jun knew that it was useless to continue wasting time here, so he made a prompt decision to bring Jiang Zhuan out of here. He moved carefully, trying to help Jiang Zhuan up. But Jiang Ji-won's injuries were too serious. Many of her bones were broken, and she could not stand at all. The slightest movement would cause heart-wrenching pain. Bailey June could only put her down and comfort her in a low voice. "Don't worry. Grandpa will call someone over." As he spoke, he took out another pill and fed it to Jiang Ji-won. Dragon Breath Pill. That's a pill that's even more precious than the bewitching fragrance pill. Bailey Chun is really willing to part with Jiang Ji-won. So what if he's generous? Didn't you see the color on Jiang Ji-won's face? I reckon that her Yuan Meridian is almost completely destroyed. This Dragon Chi pill can only help her keep her alive. In this situation, she's better off dead. Bailey June's energy and thoughts were all focused on Jiang Ji-won. How could he listen to the words around him? Chu Liwei shook her head inwardly, finding it somewhat laughable. Bailey June really thought that Jiang Ji-won's body was not damaged enough. Dragon breath pills could replenish the chi, refresh the mind, and nourish the body. But the prerequisite was that one had to have a healthy and intact body. Now that Jiang Ji-won's Yuan Meridian was broken and she could not control the power in her body, wasn't he adding fuel to the fire? She shook her head, too lazy to continue watching, and turned to leave. At this moment, Jiang Ji-won's weak voice sounded from behind her. Shangwan, you. Chu Yu's heart skipped a beat. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1468. Chu Yu's expression didn't change at all. He didn't stop and continued walking forward. It was as if he didn't hear her voice or didn't have any special reaction to the name. Bailey June looked at Jiang Ji-won. Yuan, what are you talking about? Shangwan Yu isn't here. Was her brain muddled? Jiang Ji-won forced her eyes open and stared at the back of the figure in front of her. Waves seemed to be surging in her heart. She didn't know why, but that woman's figure suddenly appeared in her mind just now. The suspicion that she had forgotten for a long time appeared again. She still felt that there was something wrong with Chu Yu. That was why she had shouted out of the blue, wanting to see the other party's reaction. However, Chu Yu didn't seem to have any abnormalities. Clan leader Ano. A white light suddenly flashed in Jiang Ji-won's mind. Since Chu Yu had a close relationship with Rong Xiu, there was no reason that he didn't know about Shangwan Yu. Why didn't he react after hearing the name? This proved that there was something wrong with him. Chu Yu she clutched Bailey June's sleeve tightly and spoke with difficulty. At that moment, the young man who had walked a distance suddenly turned around. Clan leader Bailey, although you don't believe me now, there are some things that I still have to say in advance. After the Yuan Meridian is broken, we need to draw out the wild energy in the cultivator's body as soon as possible. If we force it to stay, it will only cause more damage. Jiang Ji-won's heart seemed to be blocked by something. She stared at the young man. He looked down at her condescendingly. His cold and indifferent eyes were filled with pity and sympathy. However, Miss Jiang is of noble birth. Even if you can't cultivate, you won't have to worry about food and clothing in the future. This sentence completely shattered the last line of defense in Jiang Ji-won's heart. She let out a wild, hysterical scream. Many people frowned slightly. What was she doing? She clearly didn't have the ability, but she was going crazy in the end. They didn't come here to watch this. Patriarch Bailey, I think you should hurry up and take her away. If this continues, I'm afraid that Jiang Ji-won won't be able to hold on for much longer. Someone said casually. His words were filled with undisguised impatience. Bailey June's expression changed, but he couldn't do anything about it, because he knew that everyone else present was thinking the same thing. He took a deep breath. Just then, something grabbed his sleeve. He looked down and saw tears of blood falling from Jiang Ji-won's eyes. Please help me. She didn't want to become a cripple. In the past, she was a blessed girl. She was the best. She was the most outstanding. She should have gotten everything she wanted and not be like this, panicking like a stray dog. He was utterly defeated. She thought that she would have a chance to make a comeback today, but who knew that after a few rounds, she would be completely trampled under the feet of those people. If he had suppressed her to this extent, she might not have felt so bad. The most devastating thing was that she once thought that she had a chance to make a comeback, but in the end, she was ruthlessly sent to hell. Bailey June was so anxious that his eyes were red, and he made a mental note of Chu Luiwe. Don't say anything first. Grandpa will help you. Grandpa won't let you suffer. As Bailey June said, he wanted to pull Jiang Juan up while she recovered some strength. The ground was already covered with messy bloodstains, and it was unbearable to look at. Chu Luiwe looked on indifferently from the side. As if sensing her gaze, Jiang Zuan suddenly raised her head and looked over. There were still clear traces of tears on her face, but her scarlet eyes were cold and crazy. Chu Luiwe's eyebrows moved slightly, vaguely feeling that something was wrong with her. Yuan, Bailey June was about to take her down when he suddenly found that she was staring at Chu Yu and couldn't help but feel strange. What are you looking at? Perhaps it was because she had taken a dragon energy pill, but at this moment, Jiang Juan felt that her body had suddenly recovered a lot. She spat out a mouthful of blood and suddenly laughed. Clan leader, you still don't know? This Chu Yu is Shangguan Yu. Chu Yu's pupils contracted slightly. When the surrounding people heard this, they were all stunned. Shangguan Yu? Who's that? This name sounds a little familiar. TSK, isn't this the name of the princess that Rong Xiu chose a while ago? It's her. That's not right. Is Jiang Juan confused? She actually said that Chu Yu is Shangguan Yu. After a short period of dead silence, the surrounding people couldn't help but whisper softly. Bailey June held Jiang Juan's hand tightly with a shocked expression. Yuan, what did you say? Jiang Jiwan smiled miserably. Her expression was crazed, and she carried a ruthless aura with her as if she wanted to drag everyone down with her. Actually, she wasn't sure, but she always had this question in her heart. Originally, she wanted to find an opportunity to go to the sacrificial god temple while she was at the Yuntian Tower. However, after a series of events, she didn't even see Shangguan Yu's face, let alone other things. At first, she didn't think about it. However, when she recalled everything that had happened, she felt that it was inexplicably familiar. In addition, she knew that her Yuan meridian was broken and she was already a cripple, so she had no scruples. Since she was already in this state, she might as well take a gamble. No one would have an easy time. Chu Yu, do you dare to verify her identity in front of everyone? Countless pairs of eyes fell on Chu Luiwe. Chu Luiwe smiled, but there was a hint of coldness in her eyes. You're confused. With that, she turned around and prepared to leave. However, Jiang Juan didn't let her go. She used all her strength and screamed. You're scared. You're guilty, aren't you? Chu Luiwe didn't stop walking. I don't need to pay attention to a ridiculous guess without any evidence. However, just as he finished speaking, a low and deep voice suddenly sounded out. Who says there's no evidence? Chu Yu's heart skipped a beat, and she looked up. In the air, a figure was rapidly approaching. It was Jiang Hetien. Why is he here? Everyone looked at Jiang Hetien with a strange expression. He came at the perfect time. However, Jiang Hetien turned a blind eye to their gazes. He quickly arrived at the square with one hand behind his back. He looked at Chu Luiwe and sneered. Shangguan Yu, are you still going to pretend? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1469. Chu Luiwe looked at him and suddenly smiled faintly. Patriarch Jiang, what are you talking about? Jiang Hetien saw that she didn't admit it, but he wasn't in a hurry. He looked around and cupped his hands at the crowd. Most of the people sitting here were of higher status than him. Everyone, do you know that the real Chu Yu standing in front of you now is the current princess consort of Yuntian Tower, Shanghai Yu? The crowd was in an uproar. Guessing was one thing, but hearing it with their own ears was another. It would be a lie to say that they weren't shocked and doubtful. After all, they were somewhat curious about the legendary princess consort from outside the Divine Ruins world who had suddenly appeared and succeeded in becoming the princess consort. Now, Jiang Hetien said that Chu Yu, who had caused a lot of trouble and stirred up the entire Divine Ruins world, was Shanghai Yu. How could they not be surprised? Jiang Hetian looked at Chu Luiyue with a mocking gaze. Shanghai Yu, don't you think it's inappropriate for you to use such a fake identity to toy with everyone? Chu Luiyue sneered in her heart. As expected, the older the ginger, the spicier it was. With just a few simple words, she stood on the opposite side of everyone present. The people here today were all reputable figures in the divine ruins world. If they knew that they had been deceived and played in circles, how could they not be angry? No matter what the reason was, they wouldn't let her off easily. Chu Yuyue's expression was still calm, but her mind was already working quickly. Jiang Hiqian must have come prepared if he dared to suddenly appear like this. What did he know? What evidence did he have? If he wasn't completely confident, he wouldn't have fallen out with him so directly. Since Patriarch Jiang said that you have evidence, why don't you show it to everyone first? Chu Luiyue smiled and raised her eyebrows. Jiang Hetian sneered. Let's see how long you can laugh. Dad, when Jiang Zhuan saw Jiang Hetian appear, it was as if she had seen her last savior. She hurriedly shouted and rushed over. However, her voice was weak, her face was dark, and her body was covered in blood. She was in a sorry state. Jiang Hetian's gaze shifted. Seeing her like this, his heart trembled violently. He immediately went over to support Jiang Zhuan, feeling both heartache and resentment. Ziyuan, don't worry. Daddy will definitely not let others bully you like this again. He was going to take revenge. He wanted to make Shangguan Yu pay 1,000 times the price. He had already received the news that Jiang Zhuan was coming with Bailey Jun. Although he was a little uneasy at that time, he thought that Bailey Jun had always taken good care of Jiang Zhuan and would definitely not let her suffer. Who knew? There was no time to pursue the matter now. He could only put it aside for the time being and deal with it later. Jiang Hetian suppressed all kinds of emotions in his heart and gently patted Jiang Zhuan on the shoulder. Ziyuan, you go over to the side and rest first. Leave the rest to Father. Seeing Jiang Hetian's confident look, Jiang Zhuan felt a little relieved. She nodded and left with Bailey Jun's help. In the middle of the square, only Chu Luiyue and Jiang Hetian were left facing each other. Shangguan Yu, don't you want evidence? I'll give you the evidence, Jiang Hetian said, and suddenly looked at Shiru. I heard that the second miss of the Meteor Sect had just contracted a legendary three-eyed eagle some time ago. Shiru immediately became vigilant. So what? It's a gift from my father. Jiang Hetian smiled. Second miss, don't misunderstand. I just want to borrow your legendary three-eyed eagle for a while. I'll return it to you in a moment. Shiru frowned. Why did he suddenly want to borrow her legendary three-eyed eagle for? She had a bad feeling and immediately refused. That's my contracted magical beast. How can I lend it to you just like that? Jiang Hetian was not surprised by her reaction and continued. Second miss, I know that Shangguan Yu, oh no, I should say Chu Yu once saved you in the northern territory of the Untainted Land. It's normal for you to side with him. But now this is a serious matter. Second miss is dignified and upright. You can see the big picture. You won't be so stingy, right? Shiru frowned even more. Using these people outside to pressure her, her face became colder. What if I don't agree? Jiang Hetian suddenly chuckled. Second miss, if you really treat him as a friend, you should agree. Wouldn't it be better if you can use this to clarify things? Shiru was a little uncertain. She turned her eyes and looked at Chu Luiyue. In fact, she was still in shock. If Chu Yu was really Shangguan Yu, then Chu Luiyue noticed her gaze and looked over. Their eyes met. Chu Yueyue's lips curved up slightly as she smiled and nodded. Senior sister Rui, since he said so then, I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you. When Jiang Hetian mentioned the legendary three-eyed eagle, she had already vaguely guessed what he was going to do. She had to admit that Jiang Hetian's move was indeed unexpected. If she did not accept it, people would inevitably be suspicious. Therefore, she had to pass this test. Shiru was a little nervous, but after thinking for a moment, she nodded. Whoosh! With a clear and powerful cry, a strong and vigorous figure suddenly appeared above Shiru's head. It was Shiru's contracted mythological beast, the legendary three-eyed eagle. It was black all over, and when it spread its wings, it could almost cover the sky. Its sharp beak was frightening, as if it could easily take a person's life. Its cold and indifferent eyes were like knives quenched in ice, terrifyingly sharp. It flapped its wings and flew quickly between Chu Luiwei and Jiang Hetian. The surroundings quieted down. Everyone wanted to see what Jiang Hetian's so-called evidence was. Jiang Hetian waved at the legendary three-eyed eagle. Please, the legendary three-eyed eagle hesitated for a moment, then flew over. The man and the beast were only 3 steps away from each other. Jiang Hetian had a polite smile on his face. Thank you. As he spoke, a cold light flashed in his hand. Chi! There was a rapid and brief sound of something breaking through the air. The next moment, there was the hair-raising sound of a sharp weapon cutting into flesh. A silver flying knife as thin as a cicada's wing flew straight into the chest of the legendary three-eyed eagle in front of him. Screech! The legendary three-eyed eagle let out a sharp cry of pain. In fact, it had keenly sensed the danger, but the distance between them was so close that it could not dodge at all. It subconsciously flapped its wings. A terrifying force swept out. Jiang Hetian's chest tightened, and his body flew backward. This sudden scene gave everyone a huge shock. Shure suddenly stood up, her voice stern. Jiang Hetian, you're crazy. He said that he wanted to invite her legendary three-eyed eagle over. So it was for an assassination? However, in the next moment, an even more shocking scene occurred. The dagger suddenly transformed into countless steel bars as thick as a pinky finger, quickly binding the legendary three-eyed eagle. The steel bars were densely packed with sharp barbs. It was as if the legendary three-eyed eagle would be completely cut into minced meat in the next moment. Jiang Hetian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, smiled sinisterly and smugly, and looked at Chu Luiwei. Seeing its own clansmen being tortured like this, could it be that your godly three-eyed eagle can still endure it? Digression. Make up for the previous update. That's all for today. Mobile users, please browse and read for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1470. The legendary three-eyed eagle clan had always lived in groups and had close ties with each other. Once they encountered any danger, they would share life and death with each other. They would never stand by and do nothing when one of their own clan was in trouble. Moreover, Zichun was once the eagle lord of the legendary three-eyed eagle clan. Chu Yueyue's pupil shrank. She did not expect Jiang Hetian to use such a despicable method. Rue's expression changed drastically. She was about to rush over. However, Jiang Hetian suddenly shouted, "Sekimus, please wait. If you continue to come forward, I can't guarantee that you, the legendary three-eyed eagle, will still be able to survive." You! Rue's chest heaved up and down violently. Her pretty face was pale with anger. This Jiang Hetian was crazy. Did he know what he was doing? Of course, Jiang Hetian knew that he would offend the Meteor sect. However, he did not care about that anymore. This was the only way to deal with Shang Wanyu. Therefore, he would not hesitate even if he had to bear the terrible consequences. When he saw Jiang Zhuan's identity exposed and her Yuan meridian ruptured, he knew that his years of preparation were in vain. Now, he had no choice but to cut off all means of retreat. What was there to be afraid of? Shang Wanyu. Jiang Hetian smiled coldly. If you have the ability, just watch. As soon as he finished speaking, the steel bars that bound the legendary three-eyed eagle tightened again. The sharp barbs hooked onto the eagle's body. With a slight movement, a large piece of flesh would be torn off. Don't go. Zichen's deep and cold voice came from the bottom of her heart. Chu Luiwei could tell that Zichen was suppressing something in his words. After all, they were of the same race that was connected to it by blood. They were its descendants. How could he not feel heartache? However, he still chose Chu Luiwei at this moment. However, this did not make Chu Luiwei feel any better. On the contrary, it only made her heart heavier. Every word was like a heavy burden that pressed down on her shoulders, making it difficult for her to breathe. On the opposite side, streaks of blood had already appeared on the legendary three-eyed hawk's body. Sticky, sweet, and fishy blood kept dripping down, creating red plum blossoms on the black and white jade floor. Mournful and cold, the scene seemed to freeze. Everyone quieted down as they watched the scene in silence. Although Jiang Hetian's methods were despicable, it was undeniable that they wanted to know the final answer. The situation fell into a deadlock. Zi Chun. Chu Luiyue gently exhaled a breath of turbid air. That's your fellow clansman. I can't just stand by and watch him die. But Zi Chun was still hesitant. It's the same if the crimson gold celestial phoenix appears. Although Dumpling had just broken through not too long ago, her strength was not inferior to it. Chu Luiyue chuckled. Zi Chun, I know you're the only one who can save it now. No matter how fast Dumpling was, she couldn't be faster than Jiang Hetian. At a time like this, only Zi Chun, who was also a three-eyed hawk, could save the legendary three-eyed hawk. This was one of the reasons why Jiang Hetian dared to be so confident. I can't let you fall into an unjust situation, Chu Luiyue whispered in her heart. Although Zi Chun had been imprisoned for 1,000 years and had no contact with the legendary three-eyed hawks except for the last time in the northern wilderness, he was still the Hawk Lord. He shouldered the responsibility of protecting the entire clan. If today's matter were to spread, Zi Chun would probably never be able to return to his clan. That was not something she wanted to see. Since you've contracted with me, I'll naturally protect you. Chu Luiyue's voice was soft but heavy. Zi Chin's heart skipped a beat, and he didn't speak for a long time. Chu Luiyue urged, I'll distract Jiang Hetian later. Seize the opportunity and save it. This time, Zi Chin finally had an answer. Okay. The steel bars cut into the hawk's flesh. The legendary three-eyed hawk fell to the ground, struggling desperately. However, this only caused the steel bars to tighten even more. Gradually, the hawk's screams became softer, and its body stopped moving. Only the bloodstains on the ground were getting thicker and thicker, which was a ghastly sight. In the almost suffocating stagnation, a clear and indifferent voice finally sounded. Patriarch Jiang, you've been preparing for today for a long time, haven't you? Jiang Hetian looked at Chu Luiyue with gloomy eyes, but there was a hint of excitement in his eyes as he was about to get his revenge. Of course not. How can I compare with your ability to deceive people? He said sarcastically. Chu Luiyue didn't mind. He smiled and suddenly said, Patriarch Jiang, I've always been kind to people. Patriarch Jiang, I've always been a kind person. I don't think I've ever offended you, nor have I ever taken the initiative to provoke eldest Miss Jiang. I don't know why you're chasing me so closely. Jiang Hetian sneered. You know it in your heart. Why? Of course, it was because she had snatched the position of princess that originally belonged to Jiang Juan. Wasn't that enough? Everything had been well planned. Who knew that such a person would come out of nowhere and mess up all their years of planning? How could he not hate her? Chu Luiyue suddenly took a step forward. I don't know, but it doesn't seem to be important now. Jiang Hetian suddenly became alert. What else do you want? He inexplicably felt that Chu Luiyue was a threat, which made him faintly uneasy. Chu Luiyue curled his lips into a smile. I don't want to do anything. I just feel that there's something I need to tell you in advance. What is it? Just stand there and say it. Jiang Hetian shouted sternly. His eyes swept over Dumpling, who was on Chu Luiyue's shoulder with some fear. The person in front of him was nothing to be afraid of, but that crimson gold celestial phoenix was really difficult to deal with. Chu Luiyue's footsteps paused, his expression leisurely. It was impossible to tell that he was the one being suppressed. I want to say, I hate being threatened the most in my life, she said slowly, with a slight drawl at the end, with a bit of bone-chilling coldness. Especially with everything I care about as the stake. Every word was bone-chilling, murderous intent. Jiang Hetian met that pair of dark eyes, and his heart suddenly trembled. Swoosh! Sword light flashed in Chu Luiyue's palm. The crimson cloud sword was already clenched in his hand. Whoosh! At this moment, a huge figure suddenly appeared above her head. Its entire body was jet black, and its aura was astonishing. With a gentle flap of its wings, it set off strong winds and huge waves. That pair of eyes were disdainful and noble, and it actually made people unconsciously want to submit to it. It was the legendary three-eyed eagle. This was the first time Chu Luiwei summoned his second contracted divine beast in front of these people. Everyone was shocked on the spot. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. The legendary three-eyed eagle. It's really the legendary three-eyed eagle. Is Chu Yu really Shangguan Yu? It's definitely her. There has long been a rumor in the Divine Ruins world that the princess of the Yuntian Tower, Shangguan Yu, has two contracted divine beasts. One is the red-tailed phoenix. The other is the legendary three-eyed eagle. There's only one person in the world. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1471. This was admitting his identity in front of everyone. Jiang Heqian became excited when he saw this scene. He admitted it. He really admitted it. Shangguan Yu, now that things have come to this, what else do you have to say? Before Jiang Heqian could finish his sentence, Zichen suddenly opened his third eye. That eye was purple-gold in color. It was dazzling, noble, and domineering. He looked at the legendary three-eyed eagle that was tightly bound by the steel bars. In an instant, a terrifying aura descended. The bloodstains on the legendary three-eyed eagle's body suddenly burned crazily. The purple-gold flames instantly engulfed it. The steel bars broke inch by inch. As for the wounds on the legendary three-eyed eagle's body, they rapidly healed under the burning flames. Its weak aura also began to recover rapidly. That's the Eagle Master. The Meteor sect leader, Shi Feng, was shocked. He stood up abruptly. He looked at the scene in front of him in disbelief and rubbed his eyes hard. To be able to heal its own kind with its own strength and aura. Other than the legendary Eagle Master, who else could it be? He had only read about such rumors in some ancient books, but he had never seen it with his own eyes. Back then, when he accidentally caught the legendary three-eyed eagle that was alone, he was overjoyed for a long time. Hence, he specially studied it for a period of time. The noble bloodline power in the Eagle Master was the foundation of the legendary three-eyed eagle tribe. With just a command, thousands of legendary three-eyed eagles would pledge their lives to follow it. For thousands of years, even the ordinary legendary three-eyed eagles were rarely seen in the world of Divine Ruins, let alone the Eagle Master, a powerful existence that only existed in legends. What? Hearing Shi Feng's words, everyone present was shocked. Is Chu Yu? No, it's Shangguan Yu. It wasn't enough for her to contract with a legendary three-eyed eagle, but she also had an Eagle Master. That was an existence that was on par with them. Now, it had become the contracted divine beast of Shangguan Yu. What's the origin of this Shangguan Yu? Not only does she have a crimson gold heavenly phoenix, but she also has an Eagle Master of the legendary three-eyed eagle. In the dead silence, someone muttered absent-mindedly. Ordinary people had never even seen a top-notch mythical beast, yet she easily possessed two of them. How is this possible? Some people regained their senses, but they still couldn't believe it. The crimson gold heavenly phoenix is an ancient divine beast, while the three-eyed eagle lord also has a noble status. In terms of preciousness, it's almost impossible to determine which one is better. Logically speaking, these two mythological beasts are extremely arrogant. It would be difficult for them to even form a contract with a human, let alone to serve the same master. Preposterous. Ridiculous. No one would believe it, even if he told others about it. But now, everything was happening right in front of their eyes, and they couldn't help but question it. Shurayer also covered her red lips, her beautiful eyes full of shock. No wonder. At that time in the north of the great desolate land, those three-eyed eagles had besieged her. Later, when Chu Yu appeared, the matter was smoothly resolved. Almost everyone thought that after Chuyu entered the barrier of the legendary three-eyed eagle, everything pointed to disaster. But in the end, Chuyu still came out unscathed. At that time, all she thought about was the legendary three-eyed eagle that she had lost and regained. She didn't think about what was going on. Now that she thought about it, who else could make so many legendary three-eyed eagles compromise other than the Eagle Lord? This kid actually formed a contract with the Eagle Lord. The corner of Elder Hua Feng's eyes twitched violently. At that time, he thought that Chuyu had relied on the crimson gold heavenly phoenix to solve the problem. But now it seemed that he was completely wrong. With a few trump cards in hand, wouldn't he be able to use whatever he wanted? To think that he was so nervous and worried at that time. It's the girl. Elder Boyan took a deep breath and slowly reminded. Elder Hua Feng choked. I know. Since she was willing to summon the legendary three-eyed eagle, it had already proven her identity. Elder Hua Feng was about to say something when he suddenly caught a glimpse of Elder Wanzheng, who was in a daze. He didn't seem to have realized what had happened. His face was expressionless and a little stiff. Elder Hua Feng coughed and prodded him with his elbow. Hey, Wanzheng, are you all right? Suddenly knowing that his disciple had turned from a boy to a girl, this feeling. Shangguan Yu? Elder Wanzheng murmured softly. She Shangguan Yu? Elder Hua Feng looked at him worriedly. Could it be that he was confused? Don't worry, whether it's a boy or a girl. They're all equally outstanding. No, it's actually better than before. Wanzheng, you made a fortune this time. Putting everything else aside, just these two divine beasts alone were enough to kill everyone in an instant. If they could take such a cultivator as their disciple, anyone would be so happy that they wouldn't be able to sleep for a few days, right? If the disciple was outstanding, the master would also benefit from it, right? But Elder Wanzheng wasn't thinking about that at this moment. He turned his neck and looked at Rong Xiao. Ever since Jiang Hetian appeared and pointed out that Chuyu was Shangguan Yu, he hadn't done anything. He just sat there as if it had nothing to do with him. Why was he so calm? Elder Wanzheng swallowed his saliva and couldn't help but ask, Rong Xiao, is my disciple really your new princess consort? The people of Lingxiao College immediately looked over in unison. I almost forgot. Since this matter had something to do with Rong Xiao, he naturally knew about it long ago. Slap! Elder Hua Feng slapped himself on the head and gritted his teeth. I see. Why else would Rong Xiao care so much about Chuyu? It turned out that Chuyu was his new princess consort. When Rong Xiao heard this, he turned his head and smiled. Thank you for taking care of me during this period of time. His voice was low and there was a rare trace of gentleness and affection in it. The few elders suddenly felt as if they had been stabbed by a knife. As for Luo Shishir and the others who were standing behind him, they were so shocked that they were speechless. When she heard Rong Xiao's words, Luo Shishir suddenly came back to her senses. She looked at Mu Hongyu in a daze and saw that she was staring at the field nervously. She clenched her fists tightly and wished that she could rush forward to help. Mu Hongyu already knew? Sure. Luo Yinming looked at her worriedly. Tears welled up in Luo Shishir's eyes. She smiled and shook her head. Suddenly, she felt as if a rock had been lifted from her heart. This was good. You are quite capable. Jiang Hetian was also shocked by the incident with the Eagle Master. He only knew that Shangguan Yu had contracted a three-eyed eagle, but he didn't expect him to be so powerful. However, it didn't matter. After all, as long as he exposed Shangguan Yu's identity, everything else would be easy. Shangguan Yu, what is your motive for deceiving your superiors and concealing your identity? Jiang Hetian questioned in a deep voice. You can even disguise your identity. Who knows if you're doing something shameful? Chu Luiwei smiled. I only do things that are shameful. As she spoke, she flicked her wrist and tiptoed, heading straight for Jiang Hetian. Today, she was going to let them all clearly understand that she was not to be trifled with. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1472. Chu Yoyue's sudden action shocked everyone. Weren't they talking about her identity? Why did they suddenly want to fight? Moreover, she was no match for Jiang Hetian. Before everyone could figure out, Chu Luiyue had already arrived in front of Jiang Hetian in the blink of an eye. Jiang Hetian didn't expect Chu Luiyue to attack. As soon as she said so, swoosh! Dumpling's figure rapidly grew. Reddish-gold flames spewed out and instantly surrounded Jiang Hetian. The surrounding temperature rose rapidly, and Jiang Hetian immediately fell into a sea of fire. The terrifying flames continued to roast him, causing Jiang Hetian to tremble in fear. He might not be a match for this ancient divine beast. Shang Wanyu, are you crazy? Jiang Hetian frantically retreated as he questioned her sternly. There were still so many people around watching. She actually dared to attack in front of so many people. Chu Luiyue was too lazy to speak and slashed down with her sword. When she was a Stage 8 martial artist, she could only use her full strength once. Now that she had broken through to the intermediate stage of Stage 9, she could basically use her sword 3 times in a row. Her strength was not as good as Jiang Hetian's, but with Dumpling and Zichen around, she might be able to fight. At this time, Zichen flapped his wings and flew behind Jiang Hetian in the blink of an eye. Jiang Hetian had nowhere to retreat. In front of him was the reddish-gold heavenly phoenix. Behind him was the Eagle Lord. And there was also a Shang Wanyu whose strength had greatly increased. With a wave of his sleeve, he set up a barrier around his body. At this time, Shiruer's three-eyed eagle had completely broken free from its restraints and flew back. Shiruer carefully and nervously checked it and found that most of the wounds on its body had already scabbed over, and it seemed that its aura was normal and had basically recovered. She looked at the battlefield with mixed feelings. Eagle Lord, Shang Wanyu. Father, Jiang Zhuan exclaimed worriedly. Bailey Jun hurriedly pressed her shoulder. Yuan, don't worry. That Chu, Shang Wanyu is no match for your father. Let's just watch. As he spoke, he also looked ahead with a frown. So this is the consort chosen by the Holy Sun. Huh, how ridiculous. She disguised her identity to sneak into Lingxiao College, and even caused so much trouble. Was this what Rong Xiao? Today, in front of these big shots of the Divine Ruins world, Yin Tianke had lost all face. No wonder those people repeatedly, when he wanted to go to the Divine Sacrificial Temple, they were not even BS. He is suppressing the anger in his heart. Teet twos, two. How ts, teet. S is out subs. Shang Wanyu's consort must be removed from her position. Jiang Zhuan knew that her father was telling the truth, but for some reason, she still felt uneasy. Shang Wanyu, she's really full of tricks. She had suffered a crushing defeat in the past few confrontations, so she couldn't help but be wary of Shang Wanyu, who knew what other trump card she had. Moreover, no matter what the outcome was, her Yuan meridian was already broken. From now on, she was completely ruined. Jiang Zhuan's eyes were filled with deep despair and resentment when she thought of this. If father could get rid of Shang Wanyu while he was at it, that would be for the best. A thought flashed across her mind, and she instinctively turned around to look at Rong Xiao. That man was sitting in his seat. His handsome and seductive face was calm. It seemed like he didn't seem to care about what was happening in front of him. He's not going to make a move? Jiang Zhuan bit her lips as joy surged in her heart. Of course, Rong Xiao wouldn't make a move. Shang Wanyu was the one who was in the wrong. Is he going to offend everyone here for a woman like her? The crowd was actually very curious about Rong Xiao's attitude. Shang Wanyu was his consort after all. Shang Wanyu was the one who chose her. Even if one were to think with their toes, they would know that Shang Wanyu liked her. But now, the situation was a little complicated. If Rong Xiao acted rashly, some people would be unhappy. Many people secretly exchanged glances. It seems like Rong Xiao will still prioritize his and Yuntian Tower's interests after weighing the pros and cons. As for Shang Wanyu's consort might be important, but she was still dependent on Rong Xiao and Yuntian Tower. How could Rong Xiao give up Yuntian Tower for Shang Wanyu? Shang Wanyu's consort might have. The elders of Lingxiao College were also filled with doubts. Rongxiu has always treated Shangguan Yu well, and it was obvious that he was deeply in love with her. Why is he standing by and watching? Elder Wanzheng couldn't help but stand up and wanted to help. Shangguan Yu is my disciple after all. How could I let others bully her? But before he could take a step forward, Rongxiu looked over. Shangguan Yu's thin lips curled into a smile. Elder Wanzheng, please wait for a moment. Elder Wanzheng frowned. Wait? Shangguan Yu is running out of time. Shangguan Yu may have 2 mythical beasts to help her, but Jiang Hetian is much more powerful than her. Elder Wanzheng didn't dare to take the risk. Rongxiu's smile deepened. Shangguan Yu is still angry. You have to let her vent her anger. Elder Wanzheng was stunned. Rongxiu didn't do anything just to let that girl vent her anger. Is he so sure Shangguan Yu will win? Isn't he a little too confident? Elder Wanzheng muttered to himself. He glanced at Rongxiu and hesitated. Finally, he sat back down. After a pause, he said in a muffled voice, Anyway, if my disciple gets hurt, you have to take responsibility. Rongxiu nodded. Shangguan Yu's expression was dignified, but also arrogant. Of course. Chu Yuyue's heart was indeed filled with anger. Ever since she went to the Yuntian Tower, she had inexplicably provoked Jiang Hotian and his daughter. Shangguan Yu's Bailey Jun was also involved. Shangguan Yu didn't think she had done anything wrong to them. Shangguan Yu even let them off because the immortal water mausoleum was Yuntian Tower's #1 unit. Shangguan Yu's parents didn't give up. Shangguan Yu's face was already exposed. Shangguan Yu didn't have to give them face anymore. Shangguan Yu had to get back at them no matter what. Crack! Shangguan Yu's sword fell, and the barrier around Jiang Hetian shattered. Shangguan Yu's sword pointed at Jiang Hetian. Splatter! Shangguan Yu's sharp sword qi reached Jiang Hetian, and a bloody wound appeared between his eyebrows. Digression. Shangguan Yu, Shangguan Yu, Shangguan Yu, Shangguan Yu. 6 Pum. Chapter 1473. This sword was so terrifying. A trace of shock flashed through Jiang Hetian's heart. He came late and did not see how Chu Luwe defeated Jiang Juwan with a single strike. Thus, at this point, he didn't know that Chu Luwe was holding a real supremacy divine weapon. Jiang Hetian was shocked and angry when he sensed a few drops of blood rolling down his forehead. However, he was in a dilemma. No matter what choice he made, it would be a tough battle. Crash! He made up his mind and spread his feet apart, his expression solemn. Vigorous force erupted from his body. The pressure was astonishing. A chill spread out from his body and quickly spread to the surroundings. A thick layer of ice condensed on the ground under his feet at a speed visible to the naked eye. A thin layer of silver ice armor also appeared on his hands. Sharp, sharp, under the sunlight. It reflected rays of cold light. Chu Luiwe acutely sensed that the surrounding space was affected by this power and began to become viscous. That was Jiang Hetian's God Realm. The speed of the force in her body began to slow down. Every inch forward became more difficult than before. It was as if there were countless hands desperately trying to intercept Scarlet Heaven's sword. The sword, which should have been a clean cut, became sluggish and slow. Wave after wave of pressure came crashing down on her, crushing every inch of her body. Chu Luiwe could almost hear the creaking of her bones as they were crushed. Intense pain swept through her entire body. Chu Luiwe gritted her teeth as a sweet, fishy taste welled up in her mouth. Jiang Hetian had been a venerable god powerhouse for decades. Although he was still a distance away from breaking through to the next level, he was still much more powerful than the average venerable god powerhouse. Chu Luiwe might be able to put up a fight against a demigod powerhouse, but against such an experienced and powerful venerable god powerhouse, it was a little difficult. God Realm. That was the biggest gap between her and her opponent. At this moment, Jiang Hetian suddenly moved. His figure instantly disappeared from where he stood, and only the sound of ice shattering could be heard. In the next moment, he had already appeared behind Chu Luiwe. The distance between the two of them was merely 3 steps. His gaze was vicious as he raised his hand and punched forward. Icebreak claw. The moment he raised his hand, the surrounding heaven and earth energy seemed to have received some kind of strong summon and rapidly gathered. The wind howled. A cold wind blew. Chu Luiyue felt a chill run down his spine. At this moment, the string in her mind immediately tightened. Jiang Hetian's movements were extremely fast. When Chu Luiyue turned around to counterattack, it was already too late. This claw, she had to endure it. Shang Wanyu is still too young. Even if she is at the middle stage of the 9th level, how can she be a match for a high god? Yes, as long as Jiang Hetian displayed his god domain, he could easily control and crush him. And that Icebreak Claw is the trump card of the Tomb of Immortal Water. Just this move alone, I'm afraid Shang Wanyu will be defeated. Although those 2 divine beasts are powerful, this is a duel between 2 cultivators. There's a limit to what they can do, the crowd discussed in low voices. Clearly, they were not optimistic about Chu Luiyue's current situation. Elder One Zheng and the others could not help but want to attack. However, when they saw the calm Rongxiu beside them, they suppressed their uneasiness and continued to wait. The sharp ice armor was aimed at Chu Luiyue's back. It was about to pierce through her chest. However, at this moment, a golden light flashed around Chu Luiyue's body. Pure gold armor. In the blink of an eye, the golden soft armor covered her body perfectly. Clang! An ear-piercing sound was heard. The moment the ice armor touched the layer of armor, Chu Luiyue moved her legs slightly and quickly twisted her slender waist. Whoosh! Chu Luiyue deflected most of the force from the ice armor. It only left a shallow white mark on the armor before it quickly moved away. Chu Luiyue used this force to leap forward and roll on the ground. She quickly escaped from Jiang Hetian. Then, with one hand on the ground, she flicked her hand and threw out a sword. A heavenly water rainbow light. It flew through the air. Jiang Hetian was still shocked that Chu Luiyue had such a tough armor. In the next moment, he saw a blur and Scarlet Heaven's sword was flying toward him again. He snorted coldly and did not think much of it. This sword was powerful, but it was a pity that its owner was only a stage 9 martial artist now. The space around him was his god realm. Everything here was under his control. Why would he be afraid? Crack. The sound of something shattering was suddenly heard. Jiang Hetian's heart skipped a beat. He quickly turned his head to look in the direction of the sound. What he saw almost scared him out of his wits. A cluster of reddish-gold flames was burning at the edge of the god territory that he set up. It actually burned a black crack. Reddish-gold heavenly phoenix. Jiang Hetian suddenly thought of something in his mind. As an ancient divine beast, the reddish-gold heavenly phoenix was also able to execute a god territory. That reddish-gold flame was its god territory. At this time, the 2 god territories were clashing. It was clear that he was at a disadvantage. How could he forget this point? He had to end the battle quickly. Jiang Hetian made a prompt decision and stomped fiercely on the ground. Rumble. The loud noise was deafening. The thick layer of ice that condensed on the ground cracked rapidly. Streaks of white cold air mixed with fine and sharp ice cubes headed straight for Chu Luiyue. Before long, that cold air already completely surrounded Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue's entire body tensed up. She flipped over and got up. With a thought, a shabby and ancient black shield appeared in front of her. Clang! The shield stood tall. It blocked Chu Luiyue's figure completely. When Jiang Hetian saw that black shield, he didn't take it to heart. The corners of his mouth even revealed a sneer full of mockery. At this time, it was too naive to think that a shabby shield could block his attack. However, before the smile on his face could fully spread, another heart-stopping, shattering sound came. He hurriedly looked in another direction. Sure enough, on the other side of the god territory, a purple gold light had already transformed into a sharp awl, breaking open a second hole in the god territory. Soon, Jiang Hetian's god territory was attacked from both sides by Dumpling and Zichen's god territory. It collapsed inch by inch. Large patches of black holes appeared in midair. Turbulence roared and space distorted. It was a shocking sight. Without that layer of obstruction, Reddish Heaven's sword immediately changed direction and accelerated at the same time. It went straight for Jiang Hetian's face. Jiang Hetian's heart skipped a beat. Why is this sword chasing after me so closely? What he didn't know was that the venerable artifact had an artifact soul and was very spiritual. The artifact soul was closely connected to Chu Luiwei and understood her intentions. As long as she thought about it, she could command it like an arm. Looking at Reddish Heaven's sword that was rapidly approaching him, Jiang Hetian subconsciously wanted to retreat. However, when he moved, he was shocked to realize that he was trapped in the position where the three god territories were clashing. He couldn't move at all. This time, to Reddish Heaven's sword, he had become a complete target. Chi! The long sword broke through. It pierced through his chest. A line of blood spurted out. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1474. Everything happened too quickly. The reddish gold and purplish gold lights intertwined, dazzling everyone's eyes. Before they could see what had happened, the battle was already over. Bang! Jiang Hetian's legs gave way, and he fell to his knees. His eyes were wide open, and blood slowly seeped out of the corner of his mouth. There was a bowl-sized hole in his chest, and blood was gushing out. The blood was fresh and red, and it was still steaming. It dripped onto the layer of ice that had not melted, and it quickly cooled and condensed. This scene was really strange and frightening. Everyone quieted down, unable to believe what they were seeing. Jiang Hetian was a great deity. Shang Yu's sword had pierced his heart. She was clearly trying to take his life. Dad! A mournful cry of despair broke the silence. Jiang Jiwan looked at what had happened in front of her in disbelief. Her face was pale, and her body was trembling. Shang Yu. It was all Shang Yu's fault. She rushed forward almost uncontrollably, but after taking a step, her legs gave way and she fell to the ground. If it wasn't for Bailey Chun supporting her, she would have collapsed to the ground. She was already injured, and her heart was filled with grief and resentment. Now that she was angry, she spat out a few mouthfuls of blood and almost fainted. Yuan. Bailey Jun was worried and distressed. This child had been with him for so many years, and she had never suffered or been tired. However, she had been tortured during this period of time. He supported Jiang Jiwan and looked at Chu Luiwei sternly. Shang Yu, how dare you? Because he was full of anger, his voice was like thunder, and it was so loud that it made people's ears go numb. However, Chu Luiwei didn't even look at him. She slowly got up, and her dark and cold eyes were filled with a shocking, murderous intent. Swoosh! Scarlet Heaven sword flew back to her hand. There was not a single trace of blood on the sharp silver blade. She looked at it with satisfaction, then looked at Jiang Hetian. Bang! Jiang Hetian's god domain vanished with a loud rumble. This caused his expression to turn gloomy once again. He opened his mouth, but more blood gushed out. His eyes, which were originally arrogant and full of disdain, were now filled with fear and resentment. Soon he fell to the ground. Several streaks of light flew out from his body, and then condensed into a translucent phantom in midair. It was Jiang Hetian's soul. Seeing this scene, many people's expressions changed slightly. Jiang Hetian doesn't have a divine body. Hasn't he been stuck in the high god realm for many years? Logically speaking, he should have refined his divine body by now. In the past, he was always so arrogant, and I thought that he had already become one. Who knew? He was just pretending to be a wolf. Hasn't he always been like this? In the past few years, he had relied on the Yuntian Tower to do as he pleased. People who don't know him would think that he's the one in charge of the Yuntian Tower. Even if he doesn't have a divine body, as a high god, it's really embarrassing to be beaten to such a state by a middle stage rank 9. If I were him, I would be too ashamed to go out of my life. Haha, he was able to do as he pleased for so many years because of his thick skin. Of course, I can't compare to him. Many people chuckled softly. Jiang Hetian's status in the Yuntian Tower was considered honorable. Everyone called him Patriarch Jiang. However, in the outside world, in front of the big shots of the divine ruins, he was nothing. In the past, most of them were polite to Jiang Hetian because of Rongxiu. Now, Rongxiu's attitude was very clear. He was clearly on Shang Yu's side. Then why should they be nice to Jiang Hetian? Unfortunately, Jiang Hetian was about to go crazy at this time, and he did not care about that at all. He only knew that his physical body had been destroyed by Shang Yu. For a cultivator like him, it would take a lot of effort to reform his physical body. Jiang Hetian's voice was filled with anger and resentment. Shang Yu, the immortal water mausoleum, is the head of the 28 divisions of the Yuntian Tower, and I am the patriarch of the Jiang family in the immortal water mausoleum. How dare you treat me like this? Chu Luiyue suddenly laughed. Patriarch Jiang, you seem to have forgotten my identity. Jiang Hetian choked. Chu Luiyue took a step forward. Her back was straight, like a pine tree pressing down on snow. Tough, arrogant, honorable. She raised her chin slightly and pulled off the mask on her face. A gorgeous face appeared before everyone's eyes. The surroundings suddenly quieted down. She was as bright as the sun and as beautiful as the moon. Her eyebrows were like distant mountains. Her nose was tall and straight, and her red lips were slightly raised in a perfect arc. Especially her pair of watery eyes, which were like black jade, rippled with mist and shone with boundless brilliance. In that instant, her entire aura underwent a huge change. The elegant and gentle young man was gone. In his place was a stunningly beautiful and honorable young woman. She clearly didn't do anything, but there was a noble aura in her bones that made people unconsciously look up to her. She smiled and slowly reminded him, "Don't worry. I, Shang Yu, am the princess of the Yuntian Tower. I am the ruler, and you are the subject. Not to mention teaching you a lesson. Even if I personally kill you here today, you can't complain at all. If the ruler wants the subject to die, the subject has no choice but to die. There is no right or wrong here. Only nobility and inferiority. You offended your superiors and even tried to take my life. Jiang Hetian, even if you have 10 lives, it won't be enough to atone for your sins today." Every word was sonorous, and Jiang Hetian was speechless. At this moment, Elder Huafeng and the others also saw Chu Luiyue's true appearance. Everyone's expression changed drastically. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1475. Hearing this voice, Chu Yueyue's heart skipped a beat, and she turned her head to look. The elders were able to see her face even more clearly. However, after a brief moment of shock and joy, the few of them were a little uncertain. This face, she was indeed 70% to 80% similar to the girl in their impression, especially her eyebrows and expression. They were simply carved from the same mold. But her age didn't seem right. After a few years, that girl should be in her 20s, but the Shangwan Yu standing in the middle of the square was clearly 17 or 18 years old. Something seems wrong. Elder Huafeng couldn't help but mutter softly. She's not you, right? Actually, he wasn't sure either. In the past few months, he had become familiar with her. There were a few times when he felt that he saw a familiar shadow on her. However, those thoughts were quickly dispelled by him. Appearance, age, aura, all of these were different. Moreover, if she was really her, why didn't any of them notice this in such a long time? Was it because her acting skills were too good? Or were they two different people? Elder Bo Yin was also a little uncertain. He frowned and gripped the armrest of the chair tightly with one hand. After pondering for a moment, he couldn't help but say, "She's not." Previously, she was on the Azure Cloud roll. If the truth was as they guessed, then her name, Chuyu, wouldn't have successfully appeared in the Azure Cloud role at that time. Elder Hua Feng paused. But she's too similar. It wasn't just her appearance, but more importantly, her demeanor and temperament. In all these years, Lingxiao College had never had such a troublesome student. There were only these two. It was hard not to be suspicious. Wanzheng, what do you think? Elder Boyan asked in a low voice. As their master, he should know more than them, right? Elder Wanzheng didn't speak for a long time. He only stared at Chu Luiyue. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind in a chaotic and noisy manner. However, when he tried to think about it carefully, he found that it was a complete blank. Too many things had happened today, and now he was completely stunned. Wanzheng. Elder Boyan called out to him uneasily. Elder Wanzheng's lips quivered. Finally, he opened his mouth with difficulty. If she really is, then is she still my disciple? At that time, Yu had acknowledged the dean as her master. Elder Bo Yin and the rest did not expect him to still be thinking about this at this time and were speechless. A moment later, Elder Hua Feng patted him on the shoulder. Let's leave it to the heavens. Chu Luiyue could vaguely hear their conversation. For a moment, he felt helpless and amused. She knew what they were looking at and what they were guessing. Seeing this face that was so similar to the one from before, this was inevitable. His figure was tall and straight. As he stood there, he exuded an oppressive aura. Instantly, he created an extremely strong pressure. Yor, come here. He waved at Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue walked toward him. Rong Xiu carefully wiped away a drop of blood that had accidentally splattered on her cheek. His fingertips were warm, and his movements were restrained and gentle. However, there was an indescribable majesty and dominance. Everyone was stunned. Who had ever seen the holy son of Yuntian Tower, who killed without hesitation, treat someone so gently and carefully? Then, he looked at Jiang Jiwan. His eyes were extremely calm. I will give you and your father 15 minutes to say your final goodbyes and decide who will die first. Digression today is over. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1476. It was a simple and concise sentence, but it had already decided the life and death of these two people. Dead silence. After a moment, Jiang Jiwan murmured in disbelief. Your Highness? What did you say? Rong Xiu lifted his eyelids slightly, his eyes filled with a biting, cold, murderous intent. What? Your ears are not working now. Jiang Jiwan's face was pale. Her body was on the verge of collapse, and her knees gave way. She actually almost fainted. Bailey June immediately shouted, Saint, isn't this decision of yours a little too hasty? Even if you don't care about the lives of the father and daughter, you should at least think about the immortal water tomb. If Jiang Haitian doesn't care about it himself, then why should I waste my effort? Rong Xiu's expression was indifferent as he interrupted Bailey June. Bailey June choked. Recalling Rong Xiu's words, a trace of uneasiness gradually surged in his heart. What did this mean? Patriarch, you just came out of seclusion, so there are some things that you don't know. I will explain it to you today, so that they can all die with a clear understanding. As Rong Xiu spoke, he smiled slightly and looked at Jiang Hetian. A formless pressure pressed down on him. Jiang Hetian met that pair of deep, seemingly bottomless phoenix eyes. He felt as if his entire body had been stripped bare and seen through. Jiang Hetian, as the patriarch of the Jiang family in the immortal water tomb, you should be loyal to the Yuntian Tower. However, your heart is not right, and you colluded with outsiders to murder the princess consort. The evidence is conclusive. In the past, I was extremely tolerant of your Jiang family in the immortal water tomb on account of your many years of service to the Yuntian Tower and gave you many privileges. But now, you have committed many crimes, and the Yuntian Tower will definitely not tolerate such rebellious people. Jiang Hetian was guilty, but he did not give up. Rong Xiu had probably wanted to get rid of them for a long time. Today's words were high-sounding, but they were actually all excuses. He gritted his teeth. Since your highness says that the evidence is conclusive, please show it to us. I, Jiang Hatian, have never done anything wrong to the Yuntian Tower. Just as he was about to refute, he saw Rong Xiu suddenly take out a letter. When he saw the familiar envelope, Jiang Hatian's heart skipped a beat and his voice stopped abruptly. Rong Xiu picked up the letter and smiled faintly. Jiang Hatian, do you recognize this letter? Jiang Hatian looked away. I don't know. I've never seen this letter before. You haven't even opened it to look at the content. How do you know that you've never seen it before? Cold sweat broke out on Jiang Hetian's forehead with a swish sound. I just felt that this envelope was very unfamiliar, so I've never seen it before. Rong Xiu's lips curled up slightly. He opened the letter and took out the letter. It was a thin, yellowish, and somewhat rough piece of paper. When the sun shone down, it faintly reflected a golden light. The black handwriting on it was like flowing water, full and moving. If you don't recognize the envelope, then you should recognize the immortal grass Xian paper unique to the tomb of immortal water, right? Immortal grass Xian paper was paper made from immortal grass. It was famous for its superior quality and its ability to be preserved for thousands of years without spoiling. This type of immortal grass could only be found in very few places. The tomb of immortal water was one of those places that was rich in immortal grass. This was also one of their great advantages. Under normal circumstances, ordinary people were not qualified to possess immortal grass Xian paper. Even in the tomb of immortal water, only the direct descendants of the Jiang family could use it. Jiang Hetian was, of course, within this category. Immortal grass Xian paper is given out as a gift every year. This piece of paper doesn't mean anything. Jiang Hetian was still defending himself, but his voice was weak and his face was pale. Anyone could see that there was a problem. Rong Xiu smiled faintly. Yes, of course, a piece of immortal grass Xian paper doesn't mean anything. The point is the words on it are your own handwriting, Patriarch Jiang. Impossible. Jiang Hetian seemed to have been hit on a sore spot and suddenly began to object fiercely. This is impossible. Actually, when he saw the envelope, he recognized it as his reply to Tan Taichen. But how did this thing end up in Rong Xiu's hands? When he heard Rong Xiu say this, his first reaction was to deny it. He was very careful when he replied to the letter and put a lot of thought into it. The handwriting on this immortal grass Xian paper would disappear after reading it. Even if someone got hold of this letter, the contents would not be noticed. Rong Xiu said that there was his handwriting on it. It was most likely fake. As if guessing what he was thinking, Rong Xiu waved his wrist, and the piece of paper flew to Jiang Hetian. Look carefully. Which word on it wasn't written by you? Jiang Hetian didn't believe in heresy at first, but when he saw the intact letter, he immediately felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Line by line, word by word, he could see it clearly. This was indeed his reply to Tan Taichen, and it was intact. In this letter, you said that Yuntian Tower has already disregarded your life and death, so there's no need to hesitate. Today, you will personally come here and pull you down from the position of princess consort in front of everyone. If there's a chance, you'll get rid of her. In addition, you also said that if you doesn't admit her identity, you'll ask the other party to come forward and prove it. You've really put in a lot of effort. Rong Xiu did not speak quickly, and his voice was calm and casual as if he was telling a story. However, every word he uttered was like a heavy hammer that pounded on Jiang Hetian's heart. He was utterly defeated. Jiang Hetian's heart was in a mess, and his whole mind was in a mess. He didn't know how things had developed to this point. This letter should be in Tan Taichen's hands. Moreover, after he read it, the handwriting on it should have long disappeared without a trace. How could it still be so intact? The most important thing was that this letter was taken out by Rong Xiu. What went wrong? Suddenly, Jiang Hetian's heart sank. If this letter fell into Rong Xiu's hands, then Tan Taichen, if you don't admit it, I can also ask this person to come over and confront you face to face. As Rong Xiu spoke, He raised his eyebrows and smiled faintly. However, I'm not sure if he's still alive to hold on until now. Every word was as light as the clouds and wind, but it was as sharp as a knife and as cold as ice. Jiang Hetian didn't doubt Rong Xiu's words at all. If he said that the person was in his hands, then it must be. Otherwise, this letter wouldn't have fallen into his hands. I and the princess are husband and wife. Your intention to murder her is tantamount to treason. You father and daughter are in cahoots. You should have been executed long ago. What's there to explain? As Rong Xiu spoke, he took back the letter. Immediately, he raised his other hand, and golden flames danced on his slender and fair fingertips. Half a quarter of an hour is up. Since you can't come to a conclusion, I will make the decision for you. Chi! The golden flames flew out. Soon after, it transformed into a huge cage, trapping Jiang Hetian within it. As the flames burned, his translucent body began to distort. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1477. Jiang Hetian let out a blood-curdling scream. Rong Xiu had two divine bodies, and his strength was much higher than Jiang Hetian's. It was a piece of cake for him to deal with the half-crippled Jiang Hetian. Intense pain engulfed him. The burning of the soul was more painful than the destruction of the body. Jiang Hetian struggled frantically, trying to escape, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not break free from Rong Xiu's control. In the end, he was at the mercy of Rong Xiu. His soul gradually weakened and became transparent under the burning of the golden flames. His originally arrogant and unbridled face was now only filled with pain and despair. It hurts. It hurts too much. He had lived for so many years, but he had never suffered such terrible pain. Seeing his twisted face and body, and his gradually weakening breath, Jiang Juan was so angry that she spat out a few more mouthfuls of blood. She cried as she knelt in front of Rong Xiu. Your Highness, please let father go. There must be some kind of misunderstanding here. For so many years, the immortal water mausoleum has been loyal to you and Yuntian Tower. How could father do such a thing? There must be a mistake. She wailed and kept kowtowing. If Bailey June had not pulled her back in time, she would have fainted. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows. Are you questioning I? Jiang Juwan's heart skipped a beat. No, that's not what I meant. The evidence is right here, and the witness is in I's hands. I was thinking that if Jiang Hetian did not come today, I would give him one last chance. Unfortunately, how could he blame others for his own death? If you have time, cry for yourself. Rong Xiu said lightly. That one sentence completely pierced Jiang Jiwan's heart. The last trace of blood drained from her face, and her lips trembled violently. Gradually, her entire body began to tremble uncontrollably. She only thought that her father was going to die, but she forgot that she would be next. Her tears seemed to have dried up. Your Highness, you and our childhood friends, do you really not care about us at all? She knelt on the ground and looked at Rong Xiu in despair. Her tears flowed down, leaving two streaks of tears on her messy, blood-stained face. She looked particularly pathetic. There had never been a moment when she clearly understood that Rong Xiu really didn't have her in his heart, and he hated her to the core. In her blurred vision, that man's figure was so real, yet so illusory. He was tall and straight, handsome, like a demon and immortal. If he loved someone, he would do everything in the world just to please her, not afraid of wind and rain or dust. If he did not love a person, he would not even glances. Cold-hearted and ruthless. She had adored and followed this man for many years, but in the end, she had become a joke. What affection? Love? Affection. He did not even hesitate to take her and her father's lives. Jiang Juwan's heart felt like it was on fire. After the burning pain, it gradually withered and curled up. The blood in her body began to turn cold. When Rong Xiu heard this, he seemed to have heard a ridiculous joke. He tilted his head, pondered for a moment, and asked in return, You have indeed stayed in the divine ruins world for many years, but I have not seen you more than 10 times. So, can we be considered childhood friends?" These simple words were like two tight slaps to Jiang Ji-won's face. She opened her mouth, but her eyes rolled back, and she fainted. Yuan. Bailey June was extremely anxious. He had been cursing in his heart before, and the celestial physician he had notified had not come yet. But now, he could not care less about this. Rongxiu wanted her life. "Holy Sun, have you considered the consequences of doing this?" Bailey June said anxiously. "If the Mausoleum of Immortal Water finds out about Jiang Hetian's death, they will not let this go. You, Patriarch, you can rest assured about this." Rongxiu interrupted him. The corners of his lips curled slightly, and there was a hint of nonchalance. Right now, the people of the Mausoleum of Immortal Water should be busy preparing for the ascension ceremony of the new Patriarch. They have no time to care about this. However, I have already informed them. After this matter is over, they will send someone to bring the bones back. They are from the Jiang family after all. They will not just sit by and do nothing. However, Jiang Hetian's actions this time have let down the Jiang family's ancestors. He should not be buried in the ancestral grave. They would probably bring the bones back and find a random place to bury them. Bailey Chun was stunned when he heard that. Rongxiu had been prepared for this. He had helped the other members of the Jiang family ascend the throne. In an instant, countless things were connected and finally formed a complete chain. Bailey June came to a realization. Rongxiu clearly knew about Jiang Hetian's contact with outsiders and found a way to intercept the most recent letter. On the surface, he had been staying in the academy and ignoring everything. But in reality, he had been waiting to catch a turtle in a jar. However, Jiang Hetian did not notice this at all and even ran over excitedly. In the end, not only did he fail to drag Shang Wanyu down with him, but he also landed himself in a hopeless situation. On the surface, the Jiang family seemed to be ruled by Jiang Hetian, but in reality, that was not the case. All these years, there had been people who were eager to take over the Jiang family. It was only because Jiang Hetian had been suppressing them that they did not dare to act rashly. Now, these people were obviously looking for Rongxiu. Rongxiu had just openly punished Jiang Hetian, and now they could cause trouble in the Jiang family and directly take over the position of Patriarch. For various reasons, these people were bound to be loyal to Rongxiu. In this way, Rongxiu could effortlessly make the Immortal Water Mausoleum his power. To him, Jiang Hetian was a malignant tumor who supported him in everything he did. But from today onwards, this problem no longer existed. Bailey June was shocked and stood rooted to the spot for a long time. Rongxiu, what a ruthless method! What a deep plan! At this time, Jiang Hetian, who still had a little bit of strength left, also heard these words. This was the last straw that defeated him. His spirit was scattered, and he no longer had the will to fight. Soon, he was completely swallowed by the golden flames. He hated. In the end, he could only die with hatred and resentment. The sound of struggling finally dissipated. The golden flames engulfed everything. Jiang Hetian died just like that. There was dead silence. Everyone's expression was complicated, and they did not know what to say. Actually, they more or less knew about the conflict between the Yuntian Tower and the Immortal Water Mausoleum. Relying on the strength of the Immortal Water Mausoleum, Jiang Hetian had been tyrannical all these years. He was even somewhat famous in the Divine Ruins world. Sometimes, people would be more polite to him for the sake of the Yuntian Tower. They knew that with Rongxiu's personality, he would not tolerate it forever. After all, Rongxiu had personally led people to kill the family that wanted a rebel. But today's situation was still beyond their expectations. Jiang Hetian was dead. Next was Jiang Ji-won. Countless pairs of eyes fell on Jiang Ji-won, including Rongxiu. Bailey June shielded Jiang Ji-won behind him and shouted, "Son of God, you can't kill her." Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1478. Many people exchanged glances in private. What was Bailey June thinking? Rongxiu had already made it clear that he wanted to send both father and daughter to heaven. Now he was jumping out to stop him. Was it worth it to confront and even fall out with Rongxiu over Jiang Jiwan? Jiang Hetian was already dead. What was there to save Jiang Jiwan? Family head, you saw everything that happened just now. Jiang Jiwan deserves death. Moreover, as the son of Yuntian Tower, I can't even kill a sinner? However, Rongxiu seemed to have expected this. He wasn't shocked or angry as he questioned her with a calm expression. Bailey June's lips moved. Jiang Hetian was the one who committed the crime. He was also the one who wanted to kill Shang Wanyu. Yuan Yuan had only fought with her twice in total. Shang Wanyu was not injured at all. Yuan Yuan, on the other hand, was defeated and seriously injured. Her life is in danger. Anyway, Jiang Hetian is dead now. According to what you said, the Jiang family has a new head. Yuan Yuan's status as the eldest daughter of the Jiang family is no longer the same as before. Her Yuan meridian is broken, and she has lost her father. She is already in a desperate situation. Even so, you still won't let her go? Bailey June became angrier as he spoke. In the end, his tone was almost stern. Rongxiu, on the other hand, remained calm. After Bailey June finished speaking, he smiled and said, "Is that all you wanted to say?" Bailey June choked and waved his sleeve. Rongxiu nodded slightly. "Since you're done, I will also say a few words. Jiang Zhuan is well aware of everything that Jiang Hetian has done. She is not innocent. Otherwise, she wouldn't have taken the initiative to propose those 2 matches and used a killing move right from the start. She lost to you, because her skills were not as good and she was too weak. How did it become an excuse for her? As for her status as the eldest daughter of the Jiang family, she should have known that this day would come when she wanted to kill you. Moreover, she seemed to have always regarded herself as the eldest daughter of the Yuntian Tower, right? As for her status as the eldest daughter of the Jiang family, she did not care for it. Even if she was not the eldest daughter of the Jiang family, she would not feel bad. She should be punished for her wrongdoings. You want me to pity her? Why don't you think about how much you would have to endure if she had to face the encirclement of so many of you? If he wanted him to let go of Jiang Ziyuan, who would let go of his Yu'er? Rongxiu's tone was calm, but it had a hint of murderous intent. Chu Yuyue's heart seemed to have been hit by something. Amidst the softness, a sweet scent spread. She tilted her head and looked at Rongxiu. The contours of his face were smooth and perfect. His jade-like chin was slightly tense, and his deep eyes were filled with anger. He was angry for her. He felt injustice for her. Chu Luyue exhaled softly. In an instant, it seemed that all the anger and resentment had quietly dissipated. No matter what, this man would always stand by her side, shelter her from the wind and rain, and protect her. That was enough. She took a step forward, walked to Rongxiu's side, and held his hand. When their fingertips touched, Rongxiu immediately held her hand. Their fingers passed through the gaps of her fingers, and after a careful caress, they held each other tightly. His hand was dry and warm, and the warmth seemed to spread to the bottom of her heart in an instant. Chu Liyue's heart calmed down instantly. Bailey June was speechless. Looking at the intimate way their fingers were intertwined, he finally realized how important this woman was in Rongxiu's heart. He loved this woman so much. It was to the point that she was even more important than himself. Not to mention Jiang Zhuan. Even if it were any other woman in the world, they would not be able to compete for the position of the princess consort. If it were in the past, Bailey June might have been able to use some coercive means to force Rongxiu to submit. But now it was obviously impossible. Rongxiu had killed Jiang Hetian in front of him on purpose. This was his warning. Bailey June was extremely sullen. After a few years of seclusion, the world had changed greatly. Rongxiu had long been out of his control. Now, the only thing he could do was to protect Jiang Jiwan. Yuan Yuan has done something wrong. You can punish her, but you can't kill her. This old man will never agree to this. Bailey June's attitude was still firm. Chu Luiwen narrowed his eyes, and a trace of doubt flashed through his mind. Bailey Jun was too concerned about Jiang Jiwan, wasn't he? He was even willing to turn against Rongxiu for her. Rongxiu's intention to kill Jiang Jiwan was already so clear, but he still acted like this. Even if Jiang Jiwan was raised by him, in front of this kind of thing, there seemed to be nothing to fight over, right? Unless he had a reason not to abandon Jiang Jiwan. As the noble patriarch of a Yuntian tower, he had seen many storms and waves. What could make him like this? A vague guess appeared in his mind. Chu Luiwe frowned. Rongxiu had already spoken. If you don't want me to kill her, you should at least give me a reason, right? Bailey Jun's face was ashen. There is no reason. No means no. This old man is the patriarch. Now, I don't even have the right to spare a person's life? This was a little overbearing and unreasonable. Rongxiu was not in a hurry. Instead, his thin lips curled up slightly. He turned his head to look at Chu Luiwe and smiled warmly. Do you know that in the Yuntian Tower, there are only two ways for a person to escape death after committing a capital crime? Chu Luiwe showed a curious expression. Which two? Rongxiu raised his eyebrows slightly. The first way is that this person has once made a great contribution to the Yuntian Tower, so the merit can make up for the crime. The other way, he paused. This person has the direct bloodline of the Yuntian Tower, so he could be spared from death. Digression. The article continues at 6 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.